please don't hear any of this, Brad.
And Dad's like, I got the fuck out of there. I was like, oh man, you didn't partake?
Do you fear death?
Oh, one of the greatest lines of all time.
I could have chopped it. I could have chopped it.
Trumpinator 2020.
Making me 30 sides of red sauce.
Listened to so much. Are you
That needs two, motherfucker.
All right, man. Ty Carlson, episode 71. Welcome, sir.
Well, dude, I'm excited to be here. This is, I mean, how long have we had this on the books that we've had to push out and reschedule?
Well, it was also during holiday, and we both
That's
have.
true.
How many kids do you have?
5.
Yeah, you got 5. So
Yeah.
you got quite a bit more than I do. So I can't even imagine how hectic your schedule is. Are you coaching? Or
Yeah, I coached my daughter's volleyball team this year,
Nice.
which was awesome because I have no idea what volleyball rules are. So
Yeah.
I Googled a lot of those. But I mean, it's 3rd and 4th, 5th grade girls.
Okay.
So they're not, I mean, it's mechanics style still, you know. So I told the parents, I was like, look, we aren't winning championships. We're not doing anything crazy. We're learning mechanics, and then we'll move on from there. It ended up being
fundamentals?
awesome. It was, all fundamentals. It ended up being an awesome experience. And I told Ellis, my daughter, I was like, I would love to continue coaching you if you want to stay in volleyball. She was like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
So it was great. And
It's a special bond.
it's different.
I coached 6th grade football this year, so
Yeah. My dad coached my t-ball team and my
Yeah.
baseball team and my soccer team. And, of course, from that perspective, it's like, oh, my gosh, my dad's coaching me. I have to be perfect. And in some
Yeah.
respects, you have a little bit more weight on your shoulders.
there is a different standard you hold your
Yeah.
own kids to, sure.
But it was so cool because I'm a pretty laid back guy. I'm not competitive really with sports. I've never been a big sports guy.
Yeah.
So anytime the girls would do anything, I was like, that's great. That's
Yeah.
I was teaching them get under the ball and hit it. I don't care if it goes out of bounds. Just hit it.
Yeah.
And when they'd hit it out of bounds, they'd look at me like, did I do something wrong? And I was like, yeah, you did it. So all the girls would celebrate. Man, it was awesome. It was a very, very cool experience. And hopefully I had a parent approach me afterwards. She was like, this was Esther's first year. We were really nervous of what kind of coach she would get. You were exactly what she needed. I think you really built some confidence in her. And I was like, that's great because I don't want them to ever. I was part of teams where I quit that year playing that sport or playing that team. It was like I learned that I'm a piece of crap this year and not worth anything unless I'm scoring or winning or whatever.
Right.
So the last thing I wanted was these real young impressionable girls to feel like, well, I've got to be perfect or I've got to do the right thing or whatever. So it was awesome. I had so much fun.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Were you head coach or just assisting?
So Chad, my brother, we were going to coach together. And last year they had 1st and 2nd, 3rd and 4th, 5th and 6th. And this year they switched the years up. So he and I were going to coach together with our daughters who are a year off. They would have been 3rd, 4th together. They switched it up to be 4th, 5th, and 2nd, 3rd. So we were separate. So it was just me coaching.
Nice.
I was just,
Wow.
I was just like,
That's ballsy.
Oh man, it was wild. I always had to be there. I couldn't be, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it tonight. Assistant coach so-and-so will do it. It was just like,
Yeah.
all right, everybody, here we go.
Yeah, see, I watched last year's 5th grade, and I didn't want to get involved. I wasn't really something. I didn't even have time last year. I wouldn't have been able to do it, or 2 years ago. And but I noticed a lot of just fundamental things getting looked over because you only have in 6th grade you have 2 practices a week for 2 hours each. That's one practice for a high school, basically.
Yeah.
And so you're in such a rush to get these plays and all this. You're not getting into fundamentals.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, I could help with something small.
Yeah.
Just like which elbow is up when you're getting the ball
Right.
because it was like this and it's hitting and they're fumbling and and just in that. And I got into it because Walt was playing and I wanted to help the team. But then you start getting to know these kids.
Yeah.
I never understood the appeal of coaching. Until I never did. Like, why?
I'm with you.
Other than you just want to be an asshole,
Right.
It's like, what
I
do
wanna
you get out of
order
this?
little people around.
Right. And then I just had so much fun. It was so rewarding because these kids, you build a relationship with them,
Yeah.
and then you start feeling really bad because you get to know these kids. And it's like, I want to play everyone,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like these kids are like, Coach, can I go in this game? And it's like,
Maybe. maybe.
I hope so. I hope so. You know.
If we're far enough ahead.
Yeah.
With volleyball, they have to rotate a certain number, or you have to rotate every time you get the ball, and everybody has to play. So it was like you'll get in, but if you don't score any points, you'll be out. You'll be out right after that.
Right.
Because you have 5 maximum points, and then the other team gets the ball. And if you score 0 points and they score 0 points, you're in for 1 hit, and that's it. So it's just kind of, well, I don't know, we'll see. But it was great, man. It was awesome. And then we adopted a little girl last December, so a year and a little bit ago, and that was baby number 5, and that's been amazing. But man, it's just like constant. She's a toddler now, so she's almost 2. So like constant noise and constant movement, and there's no.
What did you not realize you were too old for that shit? What is wrong with you?
I was like, let's just do something normal, like have 4 kids. Right. And then I was like, well, this is boring. Let's add another one in.
Yeah. When the 4 gets boring, you got to do something else.
Yeah. Yeah. We knew, Kanye and I knew whenever we were getting married, even dating, we were like, foster care and adoption, that's definitely something on our hearts. And so we ended up fostering starting the process, got pregnant with number 4, delayed the foster and adoption process, and then when he was 2,
so you were thinking about it back then. Had another one.
Yeah, we stopped
Good
at
for
3
you, man.
and had another one. So yeah, it's awesome, and I was really nervous. We've got our 4 bio kids, 15, 13, 9, and 6 now.
Sorry, say that again.
15, 13, 9, and 6.
Okay.
And our 15-year-old, we had a brother and a sister for a little over a year. And, man, he struggled with it. They butted heads all the time. The 2-year-old was a 2 and an 8-year-old. 2-year-old was super cute, easy to get along with. He was kind of an asshole, but like most 2-year-olds are, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But, man, Finley, my eldest, and the 8-year-old girl, they just constantly fought, constantly. And so when we were talking about, we've had 20 or 30 kids come through our home with foster care, and this little girl we knew was going to be up for adoption. Circumstances were always going to happen that she was going to be adopted. So we talked to the kids, and we were like, this is something we've mentioned it lots of times before, but this is a little girl that we feel like we are called to adopt. And so what are your thoughts? And our 6 to 9-year-olds were like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Our 13-year-old was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
And Finley, our eldest, who we were really, really nervous about, he was like, yeah, that sounds great. So we got her, and man, he's like, give me my baby. Where's my baby?
Isn't that cool?
Oh man, amazing. We were nervous for no reason. Now we see, hindsight's 20/20. But he is. Can I do anything for Collins? She can sit on my lap and we can watch Miss Rachel, which is a little baby show. Mm-hmm. And it's been so cool to see him fill that role that we hoped he would fill. Yeah. And now he's kind of doing that. It's very, very cool. The other kids are also really great with her too. Yeah. So it's awesome.
Well, God bless you, dude. That's awesome. I almost feel like after you have 3, you might as well have 80 because it's zone coverage at that point, right?
That's exactly how I describe it.
Yeah, it's like you got somebody somewhere.
Yeah.
And once they get old enough to take care of themselves, you're not having to supervise that much. No. I mean, I've got a 9-year-old who I don't even know where he is for hours.
15 to 13-year-old, we leave home all the time by themselves. Hey, I'm going on my bike. I'm going to go to come and go. Okay, just text me whenever you get there. Whatever.
Yeah.
The 15-year-old he's always talking with his friends, and it's just like he's a homebody. He's a lot like me. He loves to be home.
Yeah.
Every now and then he's like, hey, can I go to the the Fayetteville game or whatever? Sure, yeah, you can.
So you're a big homebody.
Oh man, I love being home. Like home is.
That's my thing. Like my wife hates it because I won't ever leave unless I'm forced to leave.
Yeah.
I literally only went to 2 places for 2 years during COVID. I went to 16 General and Harps, and I was the happiest I've ever been as far as like that goes.
It's like this is my zone, you know.
Yeah, I'm an introvert, so like I don't like I can fake it pretty well, but I really don't like crowds or people I'm not comfortable with, and so that to me was just heaven.
Yeah. Oh man, I love being home. It's a little bit different, you know how it is with kids.
Yeah.
When you're like, oh, I'm gonna come home to my like safe space where it's quiet or where I can do it. That's absolutely not what this is right now. It's quiet after 9 o'clock when everyone's in bed, and you kind of like, no, you can't have something to eat. No, you can't have water. Go to bed, please. Go to bed. I'm tired of telling you to go to bed. Then it's quiet, and then it's kind of like, oh yes, we're home. But I've always loved being home, and I read at home. I had a little reading nook growing up, and so like that's where I found
where did y'all grow up?
So Kanye and I both went to Springdale High, high school sweethearts. I grew up in East Springdale, almost Sonora, on a little farm, and she grew up in Springdale too. So we have always lived here.
Yeah.
Which has been awesome. And then raising our kids here, we've seen some of our teachers, connected with some of our teachers. Some of our teachers were our kids as teachers, and it was
That's kind of neat.
It was neat. It was very, very cool. Kind of coming full circle.
How long ago have you been married?
Let's see, 2006. So
Nice.
18 years. It'll be 19 in July. 19 years in July this year.
2 years ahead of me. We'll
Oh,
be 17
my
in
gosh,
March.
man.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
coming up.
When we see pictures of us and even just like 10 years ago, it's like, man, we were so young.
You're young, you're stupid, and you're inexperienced,
Yeah,
and you have no idea what you're getting into.
no clue.
You know what I mean?
No clue.
It's like even if you do everything right and you marry somebody who has the exact same values and all
Yeah.
everything, once kids get introduced, it's all like I see so many
that's
parents who
rough.
think they're aligned until kids come
Yeah.
in, you know,
Yeah,
and then it's a different ball game. Like you really need. That's the one thing, you know. And you're gonna fight with marriages, you know. My wife and I have
yeah.
our things that we are gonna butt heads on, but like with the kids, we're very aligned.
Yeah.
It's like we agree 100% on how
yeah.
we're gonna do
you
this,
have to be.
and it's like we're not gonna let the kids play us against each other, and they've tried.
Oh, don't
You
they
know.
all? Yeah.
Yeah,
Didn't I just hear you ask Mom that same question? Oh yeah. Why? I'm gonna agree with Mom, man. Like, what do you
Yeah.
think? What do you think?
what I like to do is they'll say, "Well, what's your what do you think about this situation? Well, have you talked to your mom about it?" Because I'm like, am I getting asked 1st or second?
Right.
I already talked to Mom about it. Well, what did she say? Okay, and I even might disagree, but
Sure.
it's like, well, okay, well that's what your mom thinks. Well, let's play devil's advocate
Yeah.
and look at it from another point
Yeah.
of view, right? And kind of get somewhere. But I've never, don't undermine the wife and vice versa. As long as parents can stay aligned, I think you'll do well.
Yeah. Yeah, it is wild whenever you get married and you think, like, I've read the marriage books, we've gone through premarital counseling, whatever, like, I was raised by a mom and a dad that stayed together until Dad died in 2020. Like, great, happy marriage, a great foundation of how I want to be a dad, and I knew what kind of family I wanted.
Was
And
your dad a good dad?
Great
and
dad.
you grew up with, how many were there of you?
There's me. I was third out of
Yeah.
4. So a younger sister and then 2 older brothers.
Okay, right on.
Which with grandparents, I was definitely a middle child. Like, I won't say forgotten, but like there were some times where it was like, oh yeah, it was your birthday, wasn't it? It was like, yeah. It was.
Yeah.
Well, you're gonna take Jill out to go shopping. You took my eldest out to go shopping. So me and my middle brother Jess, it was just kind of like, here's $5, I guess. It's
Yeah.
like, cool, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And so I knew, like, I didn't want that for my kids, but of course with 5 there's like directly a middle one.
Yeah.
But I knew, I saw my dad and how involved he was, and he was a really, really great role model for being involved and taking care of business, both of those.
Yeah.
You know, not being opposite ends of the spectrum, not being mutually exclusive. It's like, I can do both of these things, but in practice now as an adult,
It's
like,
rare to
holy
be able to do both.
how do
Yeah.
my dad, I've said this probably 20 times in the past 2 weeks, like, I've heard my dad say, oh, there's not enough hours in the day, and when you're 8 years old, you're like, there's 24, that's plenty.
Yeah.
There's not enough hours in the day.
There's not.
I
And it's almost, I've gotten to a point in my life where I've started like panicking, like
Yeah.
I'm running out of time.
Yeah, yes.
Of life, like all the things. Like I've got 8 albums written, and me and Walt were like, we're gonna record X amount of songs during Christmas break, and we finished one, and then we got most of the way through the other. But it's like I've also got 2 other boys,
Yeah.
right? So I can't
I
just
know.
play music all the time. Like you want to spread it out equally, and you want
So hard.
to carve those relationships. Some are either easier than others. Like you might have a bunch of common interests with one, and then the other one you gotta find it. You know, like my youngest one's a wild man. He wants to ride dirt bikes and shoot guns and just.
You're like, bro,
Yeah,
if I
he's
get on a
just-
dirt bike,
I'm-
I will
you know.
break it.
Well, I did. I got on one, and it was I whiskey throttled. It went up. They got a good laugh at me, but I just never had that adrenaline thing.
Yeah.
But my dad did.
Oh, wow.
And so now my dad and my youngest one have this like power bond
Yeah.
of like alpha men from the 1700s,
That's
you know, where they can just do this shit, and it's great because I don't naturally have that. I have to work hard to like do that stuff.
Yeah.
And was like Max, my oldest one, like he just read, like I'm really, we're both gonna read these. He's a big sci-fi nerd, fantasy
sweet.
nerd. So like, you know, at night we watch Star Trek and we book club, you know, like whatever. And then my middle one's a musician and football player, and so. And then Theo's always wanting danger. Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm not a dangerous guy.
Yeah, I'd like to stay safe and comfortable.
Yeah,
Thanks.
but you've got to build those relationships. So you start getting into what he gets into, and it's just, I'm just glad I have my dad in that case, you know, because he's good at that stuff.
Now, do you have family around here?
Yeah, my parents live in Farmington.
Okay.
Yeah, and but again, that's one of those things, like my dad and I didn't have a lot in common.
Yeah.
And my dad's generation isn't like that affectionate generation, you know. They're like, I'm the dad, you're the son.
Right. And we're cool no matter, like...
Yeah. It was cool, but it wasn't close.
Yeah.
You know. We're closer now than we ever, like, now that we're older. But I also think, you know, part of that is until you become a parent, you really don't know what the hell you're talking about.
That's so true. It's always the, like, I would never let my kids do that, coming from non-parents,
right? And
then they have kids, and it's like, oh my god, I'm doing exactly what I never. I mean, that's just what you do. It's what you do. I would never let my kid talk to me like that.
So you say your dad passed?
Yeah, he died in 2020. He had leukemia and lymphoma, which there's some combination genetic thing where those are really bad cancers, but with this specific type, it kind of comes and goes. Like, he'd start getting sick, then you take medicine for it, and it kind of fades away, and then you stop taking medicine for it because the medicine is only effective whenever it's ramping up in, like, pain or discomfort or whatever.
Right.
Well, it was during COVID, though. So Dad started feeling kind of ill. He had gotten pneumonia a couple of times, and with his immune system kind of down in the dumps anyway, they would take him to the hospital. It was like no big deal. With COVID, you had to have COVID tests, and this was when COVID tests were taking like 5 days to get cleared. And they wouldn't. It was Highland Oncology, and they wouldn't let him come in until the COVID test cleared. And so he was in the hospital. He went to. I remember I was playing Destiny 2 with my buddies, and got a text: "Daddy's going to the hospital. He just isn't feeling very good. It's pneumonia," and a picture of him getting in the back of the ambulance. And then at 3 a.m., that was about 8 p.m. At 3 a.m., 4 a.m., my mom called and said that he had passed away, and he had gotten sepsis because the hospital wouldn't.
Are you serious? It was
let him
because
in.
of that.
Yeah. So that was like,
I've heard
really
so many
really
stories
hard.
like that.
Yeah.
It's so tragic.
Yeah, it was the type of thing that was like he's on a timeline anyway.
Right. Yeah, we don't even have to go down that road. There's a lot of things to talk about, but that's and Lord knows I've said my piece on it on this podcast many times. But I lost my grandfather in 2022, and I didn't realize how, like, my grandmother, his wife, was the person who turned me on to everything you see in this room almost.
Yeah.
Like the reptiles and the science fiction and the fantasy, you know. She gave me my first copy of The Hobbit in 4th grade, and I was like off to the races, you know. And she died in 2014, like literally 2 or 3 days before we moved in here. And my grandpa and I had never been close, but after she passed, we kind of had that shared love of her.
Yeah.
And she was in hospice. It was right before she passed, and he came and took me outside, and he said, "When she goes, we're gonna have to work at this, and I want to work at it with you, and let's build something." And we fucking did, and we've got
awesome.
We built something. You know, we unfortunately only had a few years left, like 8 years, but it was still it was a good run. And when he passed, man, it was a lot. I couldn't imagine losing a parent, and I'm sorry you had to go through that.
Yeah, thanks. It was weird. I journaled a lot during that time because I would. It was, and the best that I can describe it is like you're living two realities simultaneously. There's this I'm like, my dad is dead, and I know that,
Right.
but he was just alive and is alive still, and you know that both of them can't be true simultaneously, and one is obviously true, but like there were times where I would, reach my phone to text Dad about, hey, the lawnmower won't start, what's the best thing to do? It's like, oh, he's not here. And I would autopilot and go like, to mom and dad's farm and where I grew up. And mom ended up selling it a few years ago. But man, even when I pass it on 412, I can see it from the road, and it's like...
Does it bum you out that she sold it?
It really did then.
Yeah.
It really did then. And I didn't blame her, of course. Like, it was 2.5 acres. She's 63, 64 maybe. Couldn't take care of all that land.
It's a lot to keep up with.
And it's not a ton of land, but it's enough that she
It's
would
enough
have
for
to
somebody
mow
that
it.
age by herself. Yeah, that's.
So whenever she was selling it, I was like, man, I wish we had enough money to just buy it and make it our home, you know. But I visited it maybe a week after she sold it. This other older couple came in, moved in, because I hadn't taken I took pictures of everything that was important to me on the property, and I forgot this little portion in our laundry room that had all of our ages and heights from growing up.
Nice.
And I was like, hey, I know. I knocked on the door, and I was like, which felt so weird knocking on my own door. I was like, hey, I know this is kind of weird, but I meant to take a picture of something in the laundry room of my childhood. Can I do that? And I'm like, yeah, of course.
Nice.
And I did. I did that. But when I was leaving, I had already noticed like they had put stuff in places where that's not where our stuff went, and it seemed like it was different, and it was really good for me to have seen that, because otherwise it was like they're in my house, like these imposters. They've invaded my personal space, you know. And after that, it was a little bit easier. But man, I'll tell you, we would go to family lunch every Sunday we've done that for years. And when she moved, there was one Sunday where after church, I went on autopilot, and mom and dad's farm was this way, and mom's new house was this way, and I went this way, and Kanye put her hand on my leg as I was driving, and she was like, hey, hon, we're not going home. Yeah. And it was real. I mean, I get choked up right now. It was hard, man. And I was like, oh, why, you know? Yeah. And that was that. It's like those just real small things happen every now and then. You probably experienced something similar with. Yeah.
When Gramps died, I wanted to buy that place. I reached out to my cousins. Can we go in on this? Buy this place just to keep it, you know, because they had built it. I was 9 or 10 when they built that place. They'd grown up in a different place, but it was theirs, man. It was all wood. It was my grandmother had a rock wall in the shape of a snake where the waterfall went down. Like, it was so unique. You know, it had this loft. It was just a small cabin, but man, that place had just been left to rot for 30-something years. My dad ended up spending 2 years just fixing that place up to get it to sell, you know. But regardless, it's like you said, once you see somebody else's stuff, you know, it's like once I don't know. I had a tough time with it. I understand, you know, the brothers got to sell it and, you know, can retire. You know, it's a good opportunity for them. And once somebody else bought it and all their stuff was out, probably half the stuff that was in there is on like a lot. It was so terrible, man, because I'm such a pack rat. Yeah, it's like I got the things I wanted to get, and then everybody kind of got the things, and then like everybody'd already gone through everything, and it was like, okay, we'll get rid of the rest, and I was like, I'll take the rest. So me and the boys were just my wife was like, no more stuff, and just stupid stuff, man, stuff we should never have brought home, but it was like clinging to these relics, like, you know, you didn't even know the story of some of this stuff, and it was just, we brought in so much crap, and then just immediately realized this is nuts. We're just desperately clinging. And I know I got some choice pieces, some very nice stuff. Like, that's my grandpa on the cover of a comic book my uncle drew for him. That is, you know, stuff like that they had. My grandmother did her doctorate dissertation on the hognose snake. Oh, yeah. She had that in her office. So, you know, some choice stuff I kept. But it's just one of those things. It's like once they're gone and their things are gone, it's an empty shell. Yeah. You know, and it just, that's exactly, it's amazing how you talked about once you saw other people's stuff after it had sold and I'd been up there, it was like, it's not ours anymore. Yeah. It's a weird, and it happens quick. We were cleaning out the garage, all of Dad's tools, and Dad he was a little bit of a pack rat, but, you know, he came from post-war. His parents came from post-war Germany, or post-war Poland, and so they kept. Are you serious? Mm-hmm, everything, and so he had a
a coffee can of nails and a coffee can of screws, and he had
Yeah.
a broken hammer because it might need it.
What
somewhere.
year was your dad born? Do you remember exactly? Or roughly?
5657, 1957.
Okay.
Yep. And so we were going through his tools, and it was like, I remember this ball peen hammer, and I remember this flat nose hammer, and I remember like all his metal grinder, sharpener, all this stuff, his vice grip, and I was like, oh, I want to keep this. And then I was talking with Kanye and my brothers and everything, and we were like, I mean,
when are you ever going to use that?
I've got a wood lathe up in my garage that I'm never going to use, but it was Dad's, you know?
Right, yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
same.
got his tool belt, which was really special because we built things together, and I can see him right now wearing that tool belt and taking his hammer out,
Yeah.
you know? But yeah, it was a weird thing of like, what am I going to do with, like, I want to keep this because I want some physical connection to him.
Certainly.
But this isn't valuable to me. This thing is useless to me. I'm never going to use this. But yeah, it's hard. It's weird.
It is.
And Kanya had a really, really special relationship with him because she didn't have, her dad died when she was 9.
Oh, wow.
And so he filled that role.
He kind of became a father
Yeah.
figure to her too.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And she lived with them while she was trying to find a place to live after graduating. Well, there's a bunch of family stuff that happened with her. But anyway,
Yeah.
she lived with my mom and dad, and dad became her dad. And so it
Yeah.
was a really easy transition when we got married because now she had a dad, and she could call him dad. And and when he passed, it was really, really hard. And even now there are times where, like with Collins, our adopted daughter, she's like, man, Poppy would love her so much, and she'll just break down. She's like, oh, I wish your dad was here. I wish your dad was here. And so there's those times will never not happen. They're less frequent now, but I think my brother, after Dad died, was like, grief is the price we pay for the love we can have.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we're gonna pay the price for the rest of our lives, and we gladly do it.
Yeah.
We gladly do it, but
Yeah.
it sucks. I mean, it's
It's
awful.
rough, man. And again, I haven't experienced what you have. I'm going to be a mess. I've always had a lot of conflict with my parents, but also, I was over there this afternoon. Things. I've always been what's the word? Just counter authority.
Yeah.
Like, why
Uh-huh.
are you telling? I just didn't do well with authority. And now I've got a 9-year-old that's the same way, and it's like, well, my turbulence is coming, but I didn't like being told what to do.
Yeah.
And now, of course, I had probably zero respect for my parents when I moved out at 18.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are idiots.
Yeah, you
don't
don't
know
know
what you're
anything.
doing. And I remember telling my mom a few years ago, I was like, you just don't know until you have kids. And I still disagree with a lot of the ways my mom went about things that I don't do and wouldn't have done, but she's doing what she thought was best. And that's what you do, because there's no handbook you get in the mail
No.
with all the answers. There's no expert you can just call about this situation, because everything's unique, everything's different, everything's fluid.
Yeah, it is. Parenting is something new every single day that someone else has experienced, but in a different way.
But
so their advice is
and it's not your kid.
Yeah.
Even though it's the same situation, it's not your child, so it's the variables.
Jess has said several times, we've been talking about our kids growing up, and he's like, well, when my kids do that, we do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, if I tried that with Finley, it would have the opposite effect.
Yeah.
Finley is very anti-authority.
Yeah.
Very. He's amazing. I mean, like your kid.
Yeah.
Amazing kid. But you got to kind of like make it seem like it's his idea to follow this rule or to make this change or whatever.
Right.
And man, and the way that we consequence Finley is way different than the way we consequence Asher.
Well, that's the thing is if you blanket with a parenting style, it is going to backfire. You can't treat everyone. It's just the same way as managing a team. Some people you can just lightly suggest you do something different and they burst into tears.
Yep.
And it's like, hey, it was just... And then other people you have to get in their face and scream at them, and then they're like, okay. Fine. They mildly react, right? But if you did the screaming with somebody else, they'd melt, completely lose it. And if you try the soft gloves with somebody, they're just not even going to take you seriously. So it has to be tailored to the individual, and sometimes it's trial and error.
With kids, it's like, okay, let's try this now. Let's try this now. Let's try this now, and nothing is working, and you kind of are at your wit's end, and then finally something either clicks with you or clicks with them, and you're like, okay, all right. I remember at one point, Connie and I said something. We looked at each other, and we were like, "What the fuck just happened? What is happening? He's obeying. We don't have to fight about this." And we've been more or less real. I didn't want to be my dad, in that it was probably a lot like yours. I'm the dad, you're the son. God put me in charge of the family, so you have to obey. Well, I mean, yes-ish, but also like, you're wrong sometimes.
Exactly.
And my kids, there have been lots of times where I've apologized for being wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, it happened tonight. Finley was like, "Dad, can I play Xbox when I get home?" And I was like, "Man, we played a lot over Christmas break. We were in Atlanta. His best friend lives there, and they love playing this game together." And I was like, "You played a lot over Christmas break, and it's Monday night. You kind of got home. You just said you were tired." And he was like, "I know, but I want to play with my friend, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Not right now." And then I got home, and we were kind of in the hustle and bustle of dinner and everything. He was like, "Dad, can I please just play until 9 o'clock?" It was like 8:15. And I was like, "Yes, I am sorry that I was so short about it earlier. I know that sometimes it's confusing. I just want you to not always default to
Right.
video games."
Yeah.
But I also know that's how you hang out with your friends. So
Yeah.
we've got to have a give and take here. And he's
Yeah.
like, "I understand. Thank you. I appreciate that." Which was like such a mature response for him. I was like, "Who are you?"
Well, my wife has always thought me an insane person because she grew up in a very sheltered existence.
Yeah.
Like her dad was a driver, so he was over the road a lot. So her mom kind of raised the house, and they were homeschooled for a long time, and I don't think she had observed a lot of other families in her working, and like the way I grew up, if you fucked up, your dad was in your,
with a belt.
Or, well, not even necessarily my dad, but like other friends' dad. Like,
that's true. Yeah.
I'd be at friends' houses and just see them get worn the fuck out, and just be like,
Yeah, it didn't matter that we were in company.
It didn't even matter you were over
someone.
there.
Yeah,
they did something and they get worn out, and I saw that a lot, and maybe it wasn't right.
Yeah,
and maybe it was a little aggressive, but it happened, and so I saw things that, and so I'm a voice raiser, and I've got a temper, and with my boys, they will run until they know where that electric fence is. They're gonna keep going, and I'm the same way. Like I wished I'd had somebody punch me in the mouth when I was 16. And just say, "That's the end of the road, son."
My 13-year-old needs that. he needs to act tough to the wrong guy, and he's super sweet. He's a great kid, but man, he's just like, sometimes he's just a little much. It's like, dude, you get.
But my wife gets mad. She's like, you just get so aggressive with them when they mess up, and it's like it depends on what they do.
Yeah.
It depends on how many times I've told them, right? Because there are times where I will just lay into them, And I don't feel a bit bad. But then there's times where you got 6 things going on, and one of them's like, "Hey, can we go out and throw the ball? Can we go out and throw the ball?"
Yeah.
And you're trying to do all these things. It's like, "Yes, son, we'll do it here in just a minute." Yeah. And then, you know how it is as a dad. You got your goal is A, and now you're on 18 side quests
for real,
trying to just get to this thing, and it's like, "Bro, quit asking me. I'll come find you." And then you're like, "God, I didn't mean to be."
Yeah.
Sure. Like I don't mind a bit when I got to get on to him hard. But it's just that kind of like...
I don't want him to feel bad for wanting to spend time with me.
Right.
Right?
But it's like, at also the same time, I have these tasks I got to complete that you're not responsible for, right? And so I'm always feeling guilty where it's like, I gotta spend time with all 3 of these boys equally, but I also have these chores. And they help, and they have their own things, but sometimes you can get short with them, and it's just like, man, I apologize every time I do it.
I don't know if my dad ever apologized. He may have, but I don't know if my dad ever apologized.
Well, we are in a weird generation.
Yeah.
We're in this crossover generation where, like, the first half of our lives were with no internet, and the second half is with, right? Mm-hmm. So, how old are you?
39.
You're 39. I just turned 43? Yeah, 43. So, roughly equatable, a few years. But, I mean, you probably remember when you first got your internet computer.
Oh, yeah.
You would have been like 13?
12.
12?
Yep.
Yeah.
Man, and that was wild. We had rules all about it.
Yeah.
That was when AOL would send you free online discs.
Yeah, oh,
that
yeah.
You could have like 100 hours free or whatever.
I remember telling my dad in like 1990. We got ours in 95.
Uh-huh.
And in like 96, I remember telling him, this sucks, dude. This is never going to go anywhere. Every time somebody calls, we get kicked off.
Uh-huh.
It takes 20 minutes to log on. And boy, was I wrong.
Dude, and now we have it in our pocket. Like
Okay.
complete 100%.
On your
I was reading a
watch.
post today. Yeah. I was reading a post today about a dad talking to their kids about internet access and how you had to sign on. And it was like, you see, the default for us was offline and the exception was on.
Right.
Now, you don't have internet, that's the exception because you're constantly connected on everything. And if I don't have...
That's a good way to put that.
I don't have access.
Offline is the exception
Yeah.
now. You're almost feeling like lost and unconnected if you're not
It's
on the thing.
Weird.
For some people.
Like you look at your phone and it's like no bars or SOS or whatever it says. And you're like, oh man, I hope no one needs to get a hold of me in the
Right.
5 minutes that I don't have service. And
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, 25 years ago, man, you were like never online. 30 years ago, I guess.
Well, see, I also eschewed social media until last year. Like,
Yeah.
I never had any social media until I was about to start the podcast. And I was like, that's a good tool for, at least getting the word out there. And I find it very valuable for certain things.
Yeah.
I also find it horrendous. Like, even in the time it takes me to go to post, I see posts of other people and go, why would you think anyone cares about that or your problem or your just complaint?
Yeah.
Like these people that just complain. And I get it, it's free speech. You're free to do whatever. But it's that level of needing to share.
Yeah.
Like somebody else doesn't have a worse problem. You know?
It's the equivalent of when we were growing up. If you said something completely out of pocket, your friends, your circle would tell you you're a fucking idiot.
Oh, absolutely.
And you wouldn't.
And
you'd
that's
be
what
like,
boys
oh,
do
that's
still.
The line. Yeah,
They
that's
talk
the line.
shit.
Now, though, you can connect with other idiots.
Yeah.
And no one is telling you that's a terrible idea. Or this
we
is
get
the
into echo
dumb-
chambers
yeah,
now.
that's exactly
And it's
right.
the same on the right as it is on the
Yeah.
left, and there's no,
And even apolitically, this is what I believe. There was it's old now, but there was this kid that was like on a forum of people who believed they were part animal. And he said he was part dragon, and he was like, I can't believe my mom won't let me eat her jewelry. And she's like, well, and this other person responded, well, it might be dangerous. And he was like, well, I identify as half dragon, and that's how I feed my powers.
Right.
And she was like, oh, I'm so sorry, that stinks for you. I wish your mom would change her mind. And it's like, no, that's like not good, healthy, safe.
Well, we're enabling mental disorders.
Yeah.
And I hope that's coming to an end. It sure feels
I
like
think
it.
there's been enough time now. I think within the next few years we'll begin to see these like longitudinal studies that are
absolutely.
saying like this thing that we allowed 20 years ago. Now we're seeing the long-term results
Absolutely.
of, and that's bad. We
And
should
that's
nip
real
this
bad.
in the bud. Yeah,
We're
think
not
you're
even
right.
close to that yet, but we're already starting to see lawsuits about the transgender surgeries where a lot of these kids are saying, I just wanted to know why I was depressed.
Yeah.
And I went in and they forced me into this gender reassignment surgery.
It's a fascinating thing. I remember hearing about transgender when I was in college. I had a human sexuality class, and my teacher, her name was Bonnie Osmond, and she was amazing. I loved her. One of my favorite teachers. Professor, sorry.
Yeah.
And she said transgenderism is a real thing where you have a genetic male and a physical female or vice versa, whatever. But it's a very, very, very small percent of the population.
Right.
And
that's not even talking about gender dysphoria.
Right.
That's talking
right.
about
like physical genetic kind of thing.
Right.
Now we've got gender and all this kind of stuff that is top of mind. But I remember talking about that and being like, that's so. I never ever thought that was a thing. But there were 25 years ago peer-reviewed journals and all this kind of stuff talking about this particular topic, and now it's right, wrong, or indifferent. It's everywhere.
Right.
And my kids, like I was talking with the kids, Finley in particular. I was like, hey, you have a phone. We control what you see, what access you have, and all that kind of stuff. But I just want you to be careful and be aware of kind of what's out there. Is anything you want to talk about, and blah blah blah. And some of the things that we well, this movie's got a lot of language in it. I don't really want you watching that. And he's like, Dad, you know what I hear at school, right?
Exactly. That's always
It's
my
like,
logic to my wife as well. It's
I
like,
guess.
Kids talk worse than you think they do.
It's crazy. Of course, then he starts using those words around the younger kids, and it's like, okay, now we've got a problem.
Now we got a problem, yeah.
But it's just unfettered access to every bit of information, right or wrong, true or false, is so unhealthy.
I went to pull up my phone the other day because you were talking about this, because my wife sent me a text today while I'm at work, and I think I took a snap of it. It's going to show you. But you never know the time and place to which kids are going to choose to pull some shenanigans. But this was the text she sent me. Now, that was not said to her. That was said to one of his brothers.
Woo!
But,
all right.
I was particularly furious because I had heard him say things like this before and had told him, listen, you're a little old to be washing your mouth out, and I understand you hear worse out of me.
Oh, yeah.
So I understand that I'm setting a double standard here. But if you ever say that in front of your mother, son, we're going to have a problem.
Oh, no.
Well, he got home late, and I said, we'll talk about it tomorrow. So...
Oh, man. So in a similar vein, we're all super busy. The big boys were at home by themselves. Kanye and I were working out at the gym, and I kept getting Alexa phone calls because their phones were off. They'd been grounded. And Alexa's calling, Dad, please call me. Dad, please call me. I was like, no, I'm busy right now. So I left the gym. Kanye had to go to do a thing. And so I was going to take the little kids, and I was going to go home. So I get home, pull in the driveway, and Finley is coming out of the garage, and he is crying. And 15-year-old, he's a pretty emotional kid, but like 15-year-olds usually don't. And he's like, I open the door, and he goes, Dad, we broke your door. And I was like, what? We broke your bedroom door. And to my credit, I was like, okay, let's just go look at it. Because broken to them might not be broken. So I go in, and I'm calm. And I'm like, why don't you explain what happened?
See, I would have already lost my... How the does that happen?
No, but I knew. So Jess, when we were young, Jess jumped on Chad's back, and Chad, not knowing what to do, slammed him against the wall, but there wasn't a stud there, and so Jess went
right
into
through the drywall.
wall. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I was like, okay, this is what I'm imagining.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, so tell me what happened, Finn. And he was like, well, brothers being brothers.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. So I walk in, and Asher is sitting at our countertop on a stool, and he's crying, and he was like, I just lost my temper. I know that I'm in trouble. I was like, I'm glad that you know that.
Yeah. Hey, it's self-awareness.
We're going to have to solve this, but there's probably going to be some consequences. So I go and look at the door. The door itself is fine, but the door had to have been shut, and they had to have just busted the door down because the door jamb is just cracked.
Just cracked up, yeah.
I was like, okay, this is not a huge problem. I can fix this. Not a huge deal. The issue is this relationship here
right.
What's this interaction?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we talked about that, but it was hilarious because I knew, like, Finley is what I call an apocalypsizer, where he just makes it
the end of the world.
This is, I'm dead.
I do that too.
Yeah.
I am that person. Like, this is something that is just catastrophic in this moment. Not so much now, but especially when I was younger. It's like, this is the end. Dad's
going to kill me. But I told him, I was like, look, I really appreciate you being honest with me.
Yeah, no, I certainly appreciate transparency.
Whatever. But I was talking with Asher later. I was like, but I love you, but your temper is literally out of control. Yeah. And I brought him over. And I was like, look at the door. Like, you caused this because you lost your temper. This isn't acceptable.
Yeah.
And he gets mad when he gets in trouble. He gets mad when he gets redirected. And we're really...
Yeah.
I mean, went to school for therapy. So, I know tone plays a huge role in the way that you word things and yada, yada, yada. And so it's like, hey, I don't appreciate the way you're talking right now. I need you to lower your voice, or I need you to use different words, or I need you to talk about your feelings and not just say blah, 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 whatever. but God, this kid loses it.
Yeah.
And so since then, we have had several conversations about, hey, this is that control your anger
But a
issue.
lot of that too is hormones at
Yeah.
that age. I mean, I was just a cannon, man. The smallest thing would just set me off, and maybe I didn't have the tools of discipline or whatnot. But I mean, I had to pay for a lot of drywall and a lot of doors. I remember punching a hole through a door. You know those old cheap plywood closet doors.
Exactly what you're talking
I got pissed off. I punched all the way through it, and I go to pull my arm out. Well, the shards of the wood were all facing out, so I pull back, and all this wood goes into my arm, and like deep. I'm just like, ah! And so now I'm having to like reach around calmly and pick this stuff out while I'm my instinct is to just be furious, but I can't. Right, so I have to pick all this stuff out. So I get my arm out. Of course, there's blood on it, cuts and everything, and then go buy a new door and replace the thing. But yeah, a lot of it's genetic and a lot of it's discipline.
Yeah.
Because there's a massive anger thing that goes through my dad's side of the family, and I remember Max when he was little. It was presenting. When he'd get mad, he'd want to punch things. So we started watching Rocky movies. We got punching bags. We got stuff. It's like, let's have constructive use of our anger, and I'll do it too. We just get mad instead of punching the wall. We can go out and punch a punching bag. And it helped. But it's really more just that it's not acceptable to do these kinds of things.
I was thinking about this earlier. I was like, and it was in that exact same vein of there's hormones. A lot of it, they don't know why they feel a certain way or whatever.
Right.
And I thought, what would it look like if we just were like, it's hormones, we're cool. And I realized, and maybe this isn't really how it would play out, but I thought if we didn't maintain an expectation of, you will have self-control, even though I know right now that you can't really.
I know.
This is the expectation.
That's still
then they would grow out of their hormones and have no expectations of, I don't have to control myself.
Exactly.
So, like, even though you're not going to be successful in controlling
you're
this,
laying the foundation
exactly
for something else.
This is the boundary.
But which our parents, or at least mine, I don't know about yours, but like my parents' generation didn't communicate to us. It was like, we have all this secret knowledge. We're not going to really talk about it. We're going to tell you what is right and wrong.
Yes.
But there wasn't a lot of, like, to me, I was a curious kid. Well, why can't I do that?
Exactly.
Why can't I do that? What? Because I said so. Yeah. That, to me, wasn't a good answer. Yeah. And if you didn't explain it to me well enough, I was going to do it anyway. Yeah. Whereas I feel like our generation has kind of like that, the standards of the old and a foundation, but like with the understanding and kindness and compassion of a new generation, and then shit went off the rails because people forgot any sense of sanity or discipline or control. And I see kids now who are my kids' age, and they're like, the mom's like, "Hey, you've been on that iPad for 6 hours." I was like, "Fuck you, Mom! I'm finishing this game." And she's like, "Okay, hon." It's like Cartman's
so
mom.
Silly.
It's like, is this kid gonna survive?
Right?
Like, how do you? I don't know. Parents are just. I get it, especially with moms. Like, moms are kinder than dads generally. Like, as far as just being more compassionate. Not saying men can't be.
Sure,
I'm a very compassionate person, but I also, by God, here's the fence, here's the line, and we're not going to cross this one.
Yeah, there's been lots of instances where we've been like, the kids respond in some way, and boy, Kanye gets fired up too. But I'll just go, like, if it's some electronic thing or whatever, of course they're gonna want to keep doing it. It's like, I just want to play my video games too, but that's not how this works.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll go over there and I'll rip it out of their hands and be like, you're not getting it.
Mm-hmm.
This is a toy, an expensive toy or whatever it is, but this relationship is way more important than whatever this thing is.
Right.
And that's what we've tried to really hammer into the kids is like, relationships are going to be there long after you stop playing Fortnite or Apex or Xbox in general or talking to your friends. You're probably not going to have the same friends that you have right now in 10 years, maybe even 5. So trying to make sure that they understand family relationships are the things that are going to kind of carry you through those really difficult times when you don't have anybody else. Because I'm not going anywhere, Mom's not going anywhere, your brothers and sisters aren't going anywhere, but that friend probably is going to move. And that friend isn't going to want to be friends next year or whatever.
Well, you know what's funny and weird is when I graduated and I got married, I just I just didn't want to associate with a lot of family.
Yeah.
There's a lot of drama growing up. There was a lot of set persnickety bullshit, and I didn't want any part of it, and I didn't want my kids growing up around it. So I just cut everybody out. I was like, I'm going to do this my way. Me and my wife are going to do this. And then, last year when I started the podcast, I had, like, my buddy Jason Stillwell reached out to me. We hadn't talked really in 20-something years, but we were best friends in elementary school. And now we're hanging out every week. It's like no time has passed.
Yeah.
Because there's that foundation there, and you went apart for a long time, but then you can come back and you just find it almost effortless.
Yeah.
And I've reconnected with a lot of old friends doing this, and I don't know, it makes you feel wealthy in a way that you didn't even realize. Like, to me, wealth isn't measured in money.
Right.
It's because, eventually some generation is going to squander that, but those relationships can last generations. And it's powerful to know that you might grow apart for a while, you might do your own things, but at some point you can bring those relationships back, and that's powerful to me, because you can get to a point when you cut a lot of people out and you do feel kind of like on an island.
Yeah.
Because
your own
you don't
making.
have that family, and you've chosen that, but then, I don't know, I don't know if it was when my grandpa passed, and I don't know, I didn't want to end up like him, lonely and alone and closed off to the world, and it's like...
Well, and a lot of, growing up in I won't say the shadow of Jess and Chad, because I had my own, I was band and choir, they were sports, so it was like two things, but Jess's friends, baseball friends and football friends, man, I hung out with them probably less than I remember hanging out with them, but they were always kind. They were always inclusive, and even now I see them. Of course, now they're 3 years older than me. We might as well be friends. Yeah. But I see them now, and they treat me like a friend, not just Jess's little brother. Now, now I'm a buddy.
One of the guys.
And it meant at Dad's funeral, I remember most of the friends that he had, his baseball friends from high school came, and they still talk and they still hang out. But they treated me like an adult. Yeah. And I valued that so much, because it meant the world to me that I was on a level playing field with them. And I wasn't, going back to the relationships thing, I wasn't just the add-on. Age is such a
different factor when you're little.
Yeah.
Or it's almost weaponized. Like, you're 2 years younger, so you don't get to do this or hang out with us. Yeah. And there are a lot of things, like, we won't let Theo do things that Max is allowed to do because you're 5 years younger.
Sorry, pal.
And unfortunately, you've probably heard the deal about your family's as old as your oldest child, because we protected Max way too much for too long. And then the second one comes along, and it's like, well, we were a little strict. And then the third one comes along, and he's being raised by wolves, and you don't even know where he is. And it's like, so I hope he's okay, So when he comes in and wants to watch Rambo, it's like, well, he's been living it. He's been in Vietnam for the last 2 years, and
I'm pretty sure he skinned a squirrel by himself out back.
And it's just wild what you kind of... Let's just say Maxwell's parents would be abhorred to see the things Theo's parents allow.
Dude, 100%, I totally get it. There are things we would never allow Finley to have watched that Kipton, who is 6 now, has watched. Yeah. And it's not terrible stuff, but it's like, what are we doing?
But why were we so prude?
Right?
Like, I remember the biggest fight my wife and I had, and it was like a year or two long fight. And this was like, I was going to die on this hill, and it was Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, why not? I can't even remember their ages, but it was like, I think I'm trying to think how many years they've seen it now, but Thea was probably like 6. Yeah. Right? And she's like, I just don't like him seeing that violent imagery. And I'm like, he loves violent imagery, And anyway, of course, she ended up relenting, and it was, and that to me is not that bad of a movie, right? Like, and then it went from there to Saw to porno, and now we're dealing with that. But
that's fun.
No, but you say within, it's just to think of Lord of the Rings used to be like this thing we'd never let our oldest one watch, and then once you allow that, and things do get normalized, and you do have to be careful. Yeah, it's like, let's you keep it within the lines, but like the PG-13. You know, she grew up in a very, if it says PG-13, that's what it means.
Yeah.
Whereas, now,
I mean, a PG-13,
PG-13
Lord of the Rings versus PG-13 7, I know it's R, but like that type of movie, they're totally different PG-13s.
right.
You know?
But, like, again, I don't need some board deciding for me what's appropriate for my children. Like, I'll be the judge. I don't need the label.
Yeah.
Like, PG-13 to one kid is you know, and there's a lot of R stuff that I don't mind, you know.
Yeah.
You know, to me, sex is the one thing I don't really want them,
Yeah.
you know, let that happen organically.
Yeah.
We'll have
It'll
that
come
talk,
around.
and then, but yeah, other than that, like, language, I never, like, I've got a sailor's mouth, and violence is, you know, you see violence in nature.
Yeah.
Especially if you live out in the country.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, you see some brutal shit out here.
When Finley was 6 or 7, we started watching New Hope, and I was like, there's like
That's
nothing,
your oldest?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's like nothing bad in this. It's Star Wars, Star Wars. He
Except for the whole brother-sister thing.
It. Yeah.
That's a
He
little weird.
lost it. 15, 20 minutes in, Mos Eisley Cantina. Obi-Wan cuts the guy's hand off in the cantina, and blood, and Finley screamed, bawling, crying. I happened to be making popcorn in the kitchen at the time, and I was like, "What? What's happening?" And I mean, nightmare.
Yeah.
He still remembers. Dad, you remember when you traumatized me with Star Wars? And it's like, man, come on, give me a break. But we watch Lord of the Rings now almost every year.
Yeah.
They all know that I'm gonna cry at the end of Return of the King, always. Dad, why are you crying? You know why. We talk about this every single time. I love Lord of the Rings. Like,
I'm a movie crier too, dude.
It's
It's so shameful, but I don't, and I try and hide it. But they spot it immediately, and it's usually my wife pointing it out, because the first night it happened, that everybody was aware. My wife had made this Spanish rice, and so I can't even remember what movie it was, but I'm just sitting over there just leaking, man. And my wife's like, "Are you crying?" I was like, "No, this damn rice is hot. Is no one else eyes not watering because of this rice?" And my kids are little, and they're like, "No, Dad, there is no spice in this rice." Well, you didn't get the batch I got.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting over there like aggressively.
pissed off about it, yeah.
Do you not understand how hot this? I swear this is like some Cajun devil shit. I'm not crying over here, you know. So now the joke is, oh, Dad's getting riced again.
Oh,
you know?
dude, that's awesome.
And I can't handle movies like that, man. Because
No.
I don't know. I'm an empathetic person, and like I find it very easy, and you probably do as a writer, where you can just put yourself in those shoes and live that experience, and it's powerful sometimes.
Did you ever watch the show Parenthood? It was on, I don't know, ABC or something. It was several seasons long.
Was it a reality show or
it wasn't?
fiction?
It was kind of a sitcom.
Okay.
But it followed this family, and who's the guy that was in Coach? Who was the coach in Coach?
Oh, God, I can't think of his name.
Him, but we know him.
Yeah.
He was the patriarch of this family. And at the very end,
that sounds familiar now.
It's
You
pretty,
say that.
it's pretty popular.
Yeah.
At the very end, spoiler alert, sorry everybody, he dies. And Kanye and I bawling at the end of this. And this was before Dad died.
Yeah.
But because he was like the glue. Not that everything fell apart, but he was what made everyone. We're gonna be a family. This is what we're gonna do. This is who we are as a family.
Yeah.
You know? And oh my gosh, I bawled my eyes out. The Good Place, which is a comedy. Ted Danson, I think, fantastic show. Anyway, bawled my eyes out at the end of it.
Yeah.
Man, you get so involved in the characters and in the journeys and the things they struggle with and who they
do you
want to be.
think that, and this might kind of tie into like the artistry thing, because I wanted to nerd out a little bit, but do you feel like writers or artists are more in tune to that emotional flow?
I think that they have to be. I think every type of artist
in order
has
to capture
Yeah.
what you're trying to capture, you have to so if you're writing a supervillain or whatever, some evil character, you kind of have to live in their head for a minute to understand how they think, right?
There's a scene in my third book that I hate.
Yeah.
I hate that I wrote it.
Yeah.
But it's a bad guy talking about doing terrible things to a young girl that this other guy's trying to protect.
Yeah.
Disgusting. I hate him. I hate that scene. But it's real powerful.
Yeah.
Because
you're contrasting villainy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then the good guy beats the shit out of him, breaks every one of his fingers to send a message.
Yeah.
And it's the type of thing that you're like, yes, get him. Yes, he deserves that, you know?
Yeah.
I think any artist has to tap into that really empathetic or emotional side, because even making music, you've got lyrics and tunes.
I was actually going to flip it around. I wonder if artistic tendencies tend to almost find their way toward more emotional people too.
Yeah.
Because I didn't relate to like the jocks and stuff growing up. I played football and stuff, but I didn't like really, you know, I was more drawn to the band kids and the nerds and and you know, it was a way to express emotion. You know, I had a friend tell me recently, she's an aspiring songwriter. She's older than she's probably in her 50s, and she just started songwriting and has been asking, you know, kind of some pointers. I'm like, it's hard to explain, you know, how you know I wouldn't feel money teaching a class, like feel good taking money teaching a class, because I don't know how you teach creativity, you know. But I was like, well, I can teach you part of the, like, because there's two parts. There's the creativity, and then there's like the skill part of it.
Sure.
Right. I know the instrument, and I could make up an arrangement. John Lennon had a great story. I think it was in the Playboy interview he did in 1980, but somebody was asking him about songwriting. And, you know, how easy is it or whatever, and I'm paraphrasing, but he goes, you pay me $1 million right now, and I could write you a song. I could write it for you right now and have it finished in 5 minutes. It would be terrible.
Yeah.
But I could the craftsmanship, that's the word. I could craft you a song because I know the tricks and the trades, but it wouldn't be inspired. Right? Or even as a writer, I can write a song, but unless you get that inspiration that like captures you and obsesses you and says, I've got to stop what I'm doing and finish this tune, then you're just going through the motions. Like, I think a lot of writers do that too, you know. This is my template, and I'm going to go through this, and
there's
well, let me take a pre-break, because we're getting ready to get into nerd stuff.
Sweet.
So it's kind of cool, because I've been teaching the kids how to edit the pod and how to edit music and stuff.
Oh, nice.
That's actually a pretty cool skill to learn. So, like, me and Walter are recording. Before you get out of here, I'll show you the track we've been working on.
Yeah.
Just showing him how to do the editing and stuff, you know.
And that's something that he'll probably be able to use in the future.
Well, it's funny, when kids are young, you never know what they're going to be into. So, like, like, I'm kind of a weird anomaly. I'm a redneck nerd.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing. Like, a lot of people will meet me and just assume I'm this redneck, and then they'll find out, like, I'm into all this nerd shit. And they're like, I never would have suspected that about you.
True.
Well, you wouldn't by looking at me, but then, you know, it's vice versa. You know, all these nerds, like, I can't believe you're such a redneck. It's like, but it's a tale of two worlds. Like, my dad's parents were educated college people, liberals, and my mom's family grew up on a farm. And that's the only life they ever knew, you know. And they saw town twice a year, but they were both great people, and they both had so much to offer, but they came from such conflicting worlds, and they never would have been compatible. But I drew things from both sides, and so that's why I've always had this, like, problem with this left-right paradigm. It's like, you both have valuable things to offer. It's just,
it's too easy to demonize them.
It is. It's easy. But let's get into nerd stuff. So, I want to know, like, how old were you when you started getting into this kind of stuff? Because I know Jess.
Yeah.
Very different.
Very different.
Very different. And I didn't know him as well as I knew you.
Yeah.
But definitely can see there's
He's the
different.
Sports guy.
It's kind of like I got different sons, right?
Yeah.
They're different kids, and so, like, how did that all?
So I grew up watching Jess and Chad and Jill, my younger sister, play sports. I just did. Mom and Dad were very good at saying we're going to support each other. So you're going to go to all the baseball games, your basketball games, football games, but they are coming to your concerts and they're coming to your theater productions. And they're going to come. So
good.
So we were always there for each other. So we did the same thing with our kids. Like, it's so boring. I don't want to go sit and watch it. It's like, look, bro, I don't either. But he came to your game, or he came to your.
We're a family. That's what we're gonna do. Yeah.
So, I've always loved the arts, but writing books, really stories, and kind of a little bit Venn diagrammed into movies, is really my niche. And I remember writing a story. I was probably maybe like 7, 8, 9. That was about me and my 4 siblings, which is not true. I have 3 siblings, but I made it up. Quintuplets in the family. I think it's still in my attic, actually. And just wrote a story. And I was real young, and I remember in 5th grade writing a story. And in 7th grade, I bought my own laptop with my own money. I worked for a family friend, and they paid me to do yard work and stuff. So I bought my own laptop so I could write a story. And I have it somewhere. That
It's almost like saving up for a guitar.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I saved up for that Les Paul over there when I was a
man.
kid. Like,
You just do. That's what you
I was
like.
obsessed.
What you want.
Yeah.
And so I started writing, and it really what it is it's Zelda Ocarina of Time, just different. It's a good foundation.
That
so,
game, dude. It
It's-
still holds up other than those damn janky camera controls.
Yeah, they're kind of weird.
They're a pain.
So I wrote, and I worked on that one for years. But in the meantime, I was reading Robert Jordan and Terry Goodkind and Brian Jacques and.
So I'm assuming you finished all of the Wheel of Time with the Brandon Sanderson finale?
Yes, very pleased. Could tell there was a difference,
Okay.
but very satisfying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you read any of Sanderson's other stuff?
I have read the Mistborn trilogy,
Okay.
first 3.
First one.
Um,
None of the Wax and Wayne, though.
I read
No Stormlight?
Stormlight, maybe book 1 and 2.
Okay.
And
Didn't grab you, huh?
I hate Kaladin. I
Yeah,
hate him.
Kaladin's kind of a one. Well, you haven't even gotten to the
Right,
4th book
right,
either.
that's
Yeah,
all my buddies at work are like, you
he's
got to
got-
keep reading. It's like, oh,
No, he actually becomes worse.
Shallan, I love her storyline, and everyone's like, that's the weakest storyline. Like, I don't know. I can't explain it.
Yeah. I'm surprised you bailed on him, though. I figured you liked the magic systems and stuff.
I loved Mistborn's magic system.
Yeah.
It reminded me very much of Final Fantasy VII, of like of consuming,
Right. There's a cost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Very cool.
You have to burn through the metals.
Yep.
Like, it's not an unlimited...
And
it's
the
not a
story itself was
superpower.
cool. And at the end, I won't spoil anything, but at the end it was definitely not what I expected in a very, very good way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate Kaladin. I should probably reread it though.
But just for people who don't know, so you're talking about Robert Jordan. That's Wheel of Time.
Yep.
You also mentioned who else?
Terry
did you say?
Goodkind.
That's Sword of Truth.
Yep, Sword of Truth series.
Okay.
Brian Jacques is Redwall.
Okay, I'm not familiar with him.
It sounds cheesy. Animals that can talk, but like very, very, very
Sophisticated.
Very good. Oh
Yeah.
man, so good.
And these are authors you read when you were younger.
Yep, authors.
So who introduced you to those authors?
Let's see. John Patterson, my best friend in elementary school, still a good friend, introduced me to Brian Jacques. Probably he introduced me to Terry Goodkind as well.
Nice.
And another friend named Brandon Camp introduced me to Wheel of Time.
And are those kind of like your big...
Yeah. Tolkien followed naturally. It was like,
Yeah.
gotta read him.
Whereas if I was going to say like biggest influences, you're talking like Beatles, Led Zeppelin,
Yeah,
like,
there you
those
go.
are my
Yeah.
kings.
Yes.
Like those are your kind of your powerhouses.
They were. I devoured them. I mean, up
Yeah.
until Robert Jordan passed and Brandon Sanderson
Yeah.
finished his stuff just a couple of years ago. Like,
I'm not even halfway through Wheel of Time. I'm on book 5, so me and Max are
oh man,
book clubbing.
Have you finished the story before, or
No,
is this fresh?
this is our first read through.
Fires of Heaven is book 5. It's the longest one in the series.
Pretty sure. I'm almost certain. If I can see it up here. I think Fires of Heaven is the 5th book, and that's the one we're starting next.
I remember reading Lord of Chaos, which is book 6, and getting sick. I was in 7th grade.
Keep talking.
maybe.
I'm going to double check.
Okay.
I'm going to grab a copy.
And I was sick, and I had a fever, and had a fever dream that I could not finish reading a page and turn it without it going back to the page that I just read. And I woke up from that fever dream, and I did not read Lord of Chaos for 3 months. Could not handle it.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it was wild. It was wild.
Isn't that weird how dreams will make you panic like that?
Uh-huh.
I think.
Oh, is that...
Is this? I think it's loud. I'm just looking for the list of titles.
Oh, man. There's so... Is that signed?
I don't know if that's real. That's probably printed like that, right? I never got it signed. I mean, they probably printed it like that.
Maybe it's printed. Okay,
Well,
well,
he wasn't alive when that was published, so it couldn't be signed. Is that the list of books?
yeah.
Okay, so what's
Yeah,
the fifth
Fire
one?
7 is 5th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, is it true
So
that
good.
they dip a bit in quality? The first 4 are
Yeah.
been pretty solid.
Yeah.
I hear there's a big lull.
So far, every book is Rand versus a
Some
Forsaken.
entity. Yeah,
Yeah.
or Forsaken, yeah.
It gets real convoluted around book 5
Yeah.
and 6 and 7, where it's like you introduce. I don't think you got Moradin yet.
Yeah, Morden's in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Moradin's there, and then other Forsaken, and then there's like a who is this kind of guy, like it gets very convoluted, and then it kind of gets distracting that it's so complicated.
Have you read the Game of Thrones books?
Yeah,
Couldn't be more convoluted than that. I mean,
it rivals it.
does it really?
Yeah. Because you've got all the Forsaken, you've got all of the cities, and which he does incredibly well with different cities and accents and cultures and everything.
He does a better job to me with putting me in the world
Yeah.
and telling a story almost.
Yeah,
Like, I find his world, I like living in the world more than I actually like reading the story
yeah.
sometimes.
I know exactly what you mean.
You know what I mean?
But then on top of it now, starting in book 5, it was more 4, but 5 and really in book 6 is all of the different Aiel family names, or what,
Yeah.
what were they called?
Well, he's just captured the IE. He's just become the Kwisatz Haderach.
Yes.
And
What do they call him in this? The
Yeah, they've got their own word for it, but he's captured the Dune people.
Yeah.
And yeah.
he's the Dragon Reborn to them.
Yes.
Um,
Which was kind of the last hangers-on of
Yeah.
convincing, yeah. So that's where I've ended.
Okay.
Is he's just... Did he marry? I don't think he's married yet.
Avinda.
Yeah, he did marry. Does
Yeah.
he? Yeah.
He marries her.
It's been a minute because we finished it before a couple other books. We read 4 straight through and kind of got to a burnout point,
Yeah.
and we were
Oh,
both
yeah.
like, "Let's take a break." And then it's been a long time, and I was like, "Are we gonna finish it or are we not?" And he was like, "No, we're gonna finish it." But
6 also has one of the greatest holy shit moments.
Oh, really?
Of the entire
Nice.
series.
so I don't want to talk. I want to talk about you, but I want to talk like just to like wrap this up. You felt like there was a tone shift when Sanderson came in.
Only slight.
Okay.
Only slight, and especially in the final book.
Do you feel like he landed the plane?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes. 100%.
That's all I need to know.
It was noticeable enough that I was like, okay, this isn't Robert Jordan, but I'm a bit of a purist, like to a fault.
We got no other choice.
Right. But this is the story.
Mhm.
And it's
And then it is Jordan's story, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't his outline
his
was
notes,
finished?
his outline, yes, everything.
Yeah.
Brandon, it's Sanderson's interpret or filling in the blanks
Yeah,
between
exactly.
the major points.
Yeah.
It's great. It's
Nice.
great. I love Wheel of Time. So they influenced me a great
Sure.
deal.
And so you're young. You're already writing stories.
Yeah.
You start reading these guys.
And I realized, like, this is what I want to do. I want to be an author when I grow up. I want my book. I want to walk into Barnes & Noble or the library or whatever and see Ty Carlson as on the spine of a book. Like, someone else could read
So
this
you knew
story.
that at a young age, like you want to do this.
Yeah. And, I mean, other than waffling between author and paleontologist, I landed on the one that was probably more painful, being an author.
You
But
probably had better luck getting on Rogan if you were a paleontologist.
That's true. But I really I've written several like short stories and like partial stories and idea that my phone is full of ideas of like this would be a cool book and this would be a cool book. But in 2019, I had been part of a writing group and a buddy of mine is an author and he published through Amazon and was like, you know, you should consider like actually writing your book. And I was like, yeah, that'd be kind of cool. We'll see. And in 2019, I was like, you know what? I do need to finish this book. And I had 16,000 words in the book, and books are measured like writing in words.
Yeah, speak English. How many pages is that?
Oh,
I don't know.
30 or 40,
Okay.
like typed pages. So
Right.
maybe 60 of
Okay.
reading pages.
Okay.
And I was like, you know, I should do this. So I decided, okay, so I'm going to try and get to 40,000 words, which seemed like, oh my gosh, that's 40,000
Let me
words.
back you up a minute. Are you Stephen King writing where you're just sitting down and freeballing, or do you have an outline that you're...
Okay, so...
Because I want to know about your process.
There's two camps.
Okay.
There's
I'm very fascinated with process.
planners, and there's pantsers.
Yes.
Planners, here's what's going to happen.
Brandon
in chapter
Sanderson
1.
is a planner.
100%.
When he sits down, he already knows what
He
he's
knows.
writing.
I'm not. I'm a pantser. I fly by the seat of my pants. For the most part. I'll
Throughout
go
the
into
whole
it.
arc? Do you even have broad brushstrokes?
Very broad brush.
Very broad.
So in the bench, the first one,
Yeah.
I knew who the characters were. There's only 2, 3, 4. And kind of what the story was. So I started writing. So there's that's part of my process is like I've got this idea, I want to start writing it. Then there's non-linear drafting, which is where I'm going to write the end first, and then I'm going to write the beginning, and then I'm going to write the middle, and I'm going to write the beginning, middle, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Then there's linear,
Yep.
where you
Yep.
start in chapter 1 and you go all the way to the end. I bounce around constantly because I'll get that inspiration we talked about earlier
Yeah.
and be like, oh man, this would be a super cool way to explain this thing that happens later or earlier.
So let's tackle that.
Hash it out. So I wrote the bench in 2019, 2018, finished it in 2018, edited it all of 2019, and started what's called the querying process, where I decided, okay, so I could publish on Amazon, I could submit it to Amazon with my own, cover and blurb and all that kind of stuff, and they would publish it, and it would cost me, $300, $400.
Yeah.
Or I could send it out to publishers and agents and see if it's interesting enough for them to get, to publish it for me. And all of 2019, I did that. It was a lot. I stopped at 76, and I had an Excel spreadsheet that had all of these different kind of moving parts.
76 what?
76 submissions.
Submissions, yeah.
Almost all of them were no's.
Yeah.
And if they weren't no's, I would say probably 80% were no's.
Do you feel like they read them?
Yeah.
Or read the book and said no anyway, or do you think it was just
so with
you didn't
most
have an
queries,
agent and
probably some of
because like
that.
in music, for instance, no unsolicited materials.
Yes.
Right.
Lots of them were that, or it was during this time period in March you can send us without an agent.
Okay.
I think that they did read most of it. Those who sent me an email and were no, I think they read it and were just like, this isn't a good fit for us. It's fine.
Fair.
Half of them were probably no answers. I mean, probably half were no responses.
No response
and after
whatsoever.
3 months, a lot of them were like, if you don't hear from us in 3 months, it's a no. Or
Yeah.
if you never hear from us, it's a no, obviously. I got 6 out of those 76. I got 6 that were send us partial requests. One was a full request, but partial requests are, hey, this sounds interesting. Why don't you send us the first chapter or the first 10 pages or whatever.
Well, what were you sending them?
So you send just a blurb and a real brief description of the story in its, like, spoilers and all.
Oh, so you're not sending a manuscript. You're just sending a blurb.
Right. Because they won't invest the time.
That's not really fair to make a judgment on, though. That's hard.
It makes it very tricky, which is why they tend to ask for, give me all the high points, including spoilers. Because if it's, maybe we like sci-fi, but we want it to be like spaceships and aliens, which these are not.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, so sci-fi, yes, not spaceships and aliens, we're going to say no. So I would send that. Partial request is, send us the first chapter, send us the first 10 pages. So I'd send that. All of those came back as no's. A full request was like, this sounds awesome, send us the full book. I sent it to them, and they were like, yeah, we want to sign you. This looks great. And I was like, man, that's so exciting. Like, you read it. And they were like, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, what was your favorite part? And it was like, the whole thing was my favorite thing. And I was like,
right.
well,
Yeah.
like,
All right.
really?
Did you really read it? Yeah.
And I did a little more research. They wanted to do a contract where I would get 10% of all sales, which is terrible.
Yeah, it's a bad deal.
And I was like, I just don't think that's
Nah.
good. Like, I don't want to, like, yeah, super exciting that I got a contract offer, but
Yeah.
that's pretty crappy. So
I've turned down some offers in my day too.
Uh-huh.
It's
hard because you're like, what if this is good and I just don't know, but this sounds like not good.
yeah.
So I was really, really involved in Twitter before it was X.
Well, there's very if you get in the business world, the artists get taken advantage of a lot.
Oh yeah,
even the famous ones.
I'm
like
sure.
you find out some of like the megastars' names, deals that they had, and they weren't making the bulk of the money. It was the agent and the like. You know what I mean? Even the Beatles didn't own their own music. Like Paul McCartney had to go buy that back after Michael Jackson bought it out from under him. You know what I mean?
Wild.
Like the rights is all wild.
So with that contract, I declined it, and then I on Twitter they still do a little bit of it. It's this thing called Pit Mad, where you pitch your book and people share it. And,
I've heard of that.
If they like it, it's a really really cool thing. It's very community driven. So
nice.
If a publisher or an agent like the post, that's them requesting it from you. So instead of you sending it out to these people and hoping you get a response, you're putting your blurb out there or whatever, your hooks, and then if they like it, you get to send. That's essentially a partial
How long did
request.
it take you to find that?
Man, so I remember submitting in March of October 2019. And then got 0 likes from publishers. Lots of other people were like, this sounds so cool, which is great, but doesn't matter.
Right.
I put it in a publishing subreddit, and it got ripped to shreds. Like my blurb, like this is what I want my post to be, 240 characters, got ripped to shreds. Brutal feedback. Ended up being great feedback, because then I submitted March of 2020 and got 5 likes, 4 from a publisher and 1 from an agent, or maybe it was 2 from an agent, I remember.
Why do you say it was good? Did you rewrite anything?
I rewrote the blurb, which is just like, this is what my book's
the blurb,
about.
Yeah. See, that's the whole thing. It's like you're dealing in a trailer.
That's exactly what it is.
Because how many trailers are representative of the actual movie?
Right. And you don't want to give away the twist.
No.
So
it's tricky.
It was very, very hard. But all of the agents said, this sounds really interesting, but I don't think it's the right time for it right now. 2 of the publishers said no thanks, but one of the publishers said, this is really intriguing, but we don't think that it's ready quite yet. Would you be willing to rewrite the first chapter and submit that? And I was like, yeah. I mean, I'm not... Like, could it be better? Absolutely, yes. All right, yeah, I'll do that. So,
well, hold on, let me ask you. See, this is what's tripped me up in the past, is my ego.
Uh-huh.
It's like, how dare you criticize... You know, 'cause I was a younger man back then, too. Did that bother you at all, or were you... Like, I guess the question is, did you feel like you could do it better? And it sounds like you thought you could.
I thought, if they liked this enough to tell me we feel like it could be better, I could try and make it better. I don't know if it'll be better,
right?
But I could try.
But you're willing to try.
Yeah. So I rewrote it. I spent a month and I rewrote it, and they said, whenever you're finished, feel free to send it back, because we are interested, but we want it to be good. We want it to be better than it is.
That's fair.
I was like, yeah,
that's absolutely fair.
Sure. So I sent it back, and they said, this is so much better, but it can be even better, we think. Would you be willing to edit it again? And it wasn't anything like make crazy changes.
What did you change between draft 1 and draft 2?
So they had said, so originally my book opened with a dream sequence.
Okay.
And they were like, dream sequences are very popular, but immediately you know that the main character is unreliable. And I was like, well, he's not. And they're like, but that's what you think. And I was like, okay. They were like, so would you be willing to rewrite it so that it's not a dream sequence? Or that they're just like suddenly waking up? And I was like, oh, I mean, yeah, sure. But I want this part to be in there. And they were like, write it and let us see. I was like, okay. So I did that. So they said, this is so much better. Would you be willing to go through it one more time? And I said, yeah, of course. So after that second time I went through it, I submitted it, and they were like, this is great. We want to have a conversation with you.
Nice.
Ended up getting a contract with them. They're my publisher, 4 Horsemen Publications. They're amazing. I definitely made the right choice to go with them. They're incredible. And through the process, through like this signing the contract and everything, they were like, we've talked to several sci-fi authors, and you're the first one that said they were willing to rewrite their stuff or to edit their stuff. I was like, really? And they said, yeah,
writers are assholes,
because
dude.
The ego, right?
It's an ego thing. It's like, this is my art, and you don't tell me. Yeah,
I know what my story needs, and for me, and whether it was ignorance or just not confidence, I was like, well, yeah. Like, if you think my book could be better,
do you
like,
feel like it
better.
actually is better?
100%. 100%. Right? Yeah. So it
And
was
that's
a
all you
great
need to know.
move.
So somebody pushed you into making something better.
Yeah.
That's a good example.
And they're a publisher, so they know what most people will react to as far as the book is. I have written at that point, I had written a book.
Yeah.
And I knew just that book.
Yeah.
So
You're not a proven figure. You're not
Right.
publishing. You're not making anybody money.
Yep.
You're just a guy
And
with
so
a dream.
if they
at
were
that
willing
point.
to put a little bit of money into me, if I could make it better, then I was willing to take that risk.
That's fair. That's a very mature.
Thank you. So I signed a contract with them, 10 books in 5 years, 10 works in 5 years, which is 2 a year, obviously math. So every 6 months I'm turning a book in. So I wrote that first one, got it published in 2021, wrote a second one, and then got it published in 2022, wrote a third one, and the third one I wrote from beginning to end, full stop. Just chapter 1, this is what it didn't have an outline, but I wrote beginning to end.
So this terrifies me. So you're starting. There's no way to equate songwriting and because with me it's like a song is a chapter in an album,
Sure.
and the
Yeah,
album is a novel, right?
Yeah.
And so to me there is a theme and those
Yeah.
kinds of things, but they're not compatible in any way, really. You know what I mean? Like I'm not having to call back to shit.
Yeah.
And
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have to have any consistency with tone
Yeah.
or narrative. Like, to me, songwriting is very lazy. Like, I got a 3-minute attention span, and then I'm on to the next thing, where you can't do that in a book.
Yeah.
You've got to tie second chapter into
Yes.
first. You've got to build. You've got to, even if you don't think it out, you've got to be creative enough to see where this goes.
Yeah.
Where does that inspiration come from? Like, that's a lot of creativity.
So, first book, I finished in 2020. I finished in 2019, edited in 2019. Dad died 2020. I adjusted a lot of what it was in there, processing my grief. And
Really?
So,
This would have been on the second book?
the first book.
On the first book.
Yeah. So it was published 2021, and as I was editing it, I was adding in and processing a lot of these feelings that I had about of Dad dying. Like what am I supposed to feel here? What would this character feel? Because this deals a lot with grief. And so that was motivation for it. Second book is from the perspective of a dad, of like all of the internal conversations we have with ourselves of like, am I just screwing my kids up? And was this the right decision? Am I, going against my wife's wishes by saying this? Like, am I?
Wow, some deep introspection.
A lot of stuff.
Yeah.
If that's what I
This
was.
is book 2.
Yeah, book 2.
Yeah.
Third book has a lot to do with our foster journey. So we start not our actual foster journey, but it's found family is the whole theme. And this guy finds a deaf orphan, and she doesn't have anybody, and so he unwillingly takes her on and develops a relationship with her through that. And so that had a lot to do with it. So the motivation, the fourth one has other stuff, but like for the third book, the reason I was able to write it from beginning to end isn't necessarily from that inspiration. I knew high points, and I knew I needed to reach those points, but I didn't know how I was going to get there. Crazy thing about writing that, my intention at the beginning was to have single point of view. It's going to be this guy named Shipley, and he goes by Lee, and we're just going to see the world through Lee's eyes. And then I finished chapter 1, and I was like, oh, well, I guess now we're writing from Wade's perspective. Who is Wade? I don't know. Let's see. And so I start writing it out, and then Red Jack came along, and I was like, who is Red? Who are these people? And I'd start writing them, and then the story would come out. And
So it was manifesting?
It was real weird. It was real weird to start a new chapter and not know who the person that I was writing about was, because I just mentioned them at the end of the previous chapter, and realizing, okay, so this is Wade's chapter now, and I don't know where this is going to go, but I know I have to get here. So like
Right.
we were on, the green line, and we got off, and now we're on blue line. Okay, I guess blue line leads here. Well, actually, red line leads there. Okay, well, so the next chapter is red line. It was real weird, but I wrote from beginning to end. It's the shortest of the two. I think it's 250 pages long, but one of my favorites. It might be my favorite that I've written, because this deaf orphan. I have a deaf friend who lives in North Carolina, that I had read this to make sure that it's like I don't want to offend and I don't want to just assume this is how like deaf community works. So
Yeah.
help me out here. He said it was
Nice.
great. He was fine. Gave me some pointers. But
Well, are you familiar with like how Brandon Sanderson has like his beta reader groups and stuff where
Yeah.
he like really puts it through the
very,
ringer?
very rigorous. And I wanted something similar because it was valuable
Feedback
to me.
over somebody you trust,
Yeah.
especially if you're going to write about, like I wouldn't feel comfortable writing the journey of a black man growing up in Alabama,
Exactly.
right? Like
Yep.
you'd want somebody to kind of...
Yeah. Does this make sense to you? You know?
Right.
But that happens all the time with authors. The authors write from perspective of women or from...
Stephen King does it all the time.
all the
He
time.
doesn't ever do any research.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah,
Which, when I get that point, I probably won't care either. But
fair.
so this character, it's not a complicated relationship. It's when a toddler hands you a phone, you answer it, right? Like no matter what, you just do.
Yeah.
With Luna, is the name of this little girl, the relationship that she has with Lee is one of there's no other option. She has to trust him. She doesn't know if he's safe at first. She has to trust him. And so Lee doesn't have a choice. He has to take care of her. He's not so heartless that he wants her to die, but he's not going to take responsibility for her. So he's going to push her off he's going to go back to this town called Lilypad, and he's going to leave her there. Well, the tender moments in this book, while writing it, I cried several times just because it was this emotional connection between probably what I was experiencing at the time with my foster kids and what Luna was experiencing and the questioning of who Lee is. And there are these really beautiful moments between Lee, a reluctant caregiver, and Luna, just a trusting child, where she has to help him understand her when no one else can.
Yeah.
And so there's some really, really cool scenes in there. It was hard to write, but it was super fun to write because the main bad guy, well, there are a couple bad guys, but Wade and this Red Jack character. So it's like post-apocalyptic Mad Maxy. Not Mad Maxy. Mad Max-ish.
I know what you're
And
saying, yeah.
I had a lot of fun writing it. And it's very cool. So
Are you still enjoying writing?
love it.
You don't feel like it's a job?
I do, but that helps motivate me. I've always worked well under pressure. So like,
see that to me, when it was a job, made me hate it
yeah,
somehow.
I
It's like when your hobby, the thing you love, is now responsible for making a dollar.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, it almost took the fun out of
Yeah.
it for me, and it just...
there are times when it does, but it's easy for me to remember. Like I like writing, and these stories are in me, or they're out there,
Sure.
and I'm the conduit for them. So like, I gotta write them.
Yeah.
And
well, I think a lot of it for musicians is the touring.
oh, I
It's
can't
the
imagine.
it's the live playing. I
Yeah.
always hated playing live. If I could have just sat in a studio and made records all
Yeah.
the time, I would have loved it. It's the playing live and
I have a friend that I met last summer who's on tour with her book, and it's, I mean, flying all over the place.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have kids. She may have a partner or husband. She didn't whenever I knew her, but like, it's cool to see the success, but it's also like I'm having to remember that's a sacrifice. Like, she's making a sacrifice by doing this.
yeah.
Even if she doesn't have kids or a partner, like, your life is in, Chicago or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, now you're in LA this weekend, and next weekend you're going to be in Indianapolis, and then the weekend after that you're going to be in Minnesota or whatever.
I guess the bright side of that though is you're meeting up with people who love your work.
Yeah.
Though, so I mean
It's
that's
got to be fulfilling.
That's kind of rewarding. Yeah. Certainly.
Yeah, I think that would be cool, but this writing has always been a decompressing tactic for me. Always. And it being my side gig job hasn't diminished that at all. It may have enhanced it a little bit because now I have to force myself to go decompress. If I've had a rough
Right.
day, sitting down and writing is soothing. I love it.
So as a songwriter, you're writing from a lot of different perspectives, right?
Yeah.
I've written songs from female perspectives,
Yeah.
from different perspectives, and empathy helps do that. Do you put yourself into the books in any way?
I didn't think that I did, but I a buddy that I work with, I trust a lot, finished The Bench and was like, that was, you just wrote you. I was like, no, I didn't. He was like, yeah, and Meredith, the wife, is 100% Kanye. I was like, no, that's not true. And the more and more I thought about it and reread some of the stuff, I was like, fuck.
You did it subconsciously.
Did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Second book is definitely me. Because that's, as a parent, as a dad, I was having these questions, and Grant is having these questions. And so I funneled all of it into this character. And the end, the kind of the resolution is what I hope I would provide for my family at some point.
Right.
Is the goal, you know. So
my mom used to tell me when I was writing songs, she's like, your writing is always, it's like a journal, you know, you're always writing about, like, I'm not writing about me. What are you talking about? You know? And it's like, and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
And then you go back later and you're like, oh shit, yeah, it is. Yeah. All of this is. It all is. And it's like, I don't know, you're so tough and shielded. It's like, no, that's not me. There's pain in there. I don't have any pain. Yeah. You know? And then as you get older, it's like you learn to lean into that.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the best. Oh, I was going to tell the story and I kind of got sidetracked. My friend who's writing songs right now.
Oh, yeah.
I was asking her how it was going, and she's like, I'm just in an angry, broken place right now. I don't feel like writing. And I was like, that is when you need to write.
Yeah.
Get that out. Put that pain into something that can help somebody else, or at least capture this moment. Because I've written some songs from such deep pain that are now so beautiful. I go back and listen to it. It's like, man, that's a great song. And even though I don't feel that way right now, and hope to never feel that way again, I captured the way I felt that night, you know?
Oh, man.
It's like, when you're writing, do you bring your day into it? Do you bring events from your life?
I can tell there are days where my writing's going to be shit. And I'll probably delete everything that I write that day.
Why do you even sit down then? Like just to go through the motions? Or?
Because I'm going to have to...
The discipline of it?
It's a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to go through the shitty writing to get to the good writing anyways. Whether I do it today or tomorrow or next week, the shitty writing is blocking me from the good writing.
But how do you know when it's shitty? Are you objective enough to say, this is bad, this is good, even though it's all my stuff?
So I'll write... Right now I'm writing the sixth book, and I'll write it. And I do a little bit of editing while I'm writing. Like, I'm like, oh, I don't want the sentence to sound like that, or there's a better word for this. But I don't do hardcore editing at all. I'll reread it a second time, and I'll go through, and there are times where it's like, oh man, this is an awesome quote, and there are times where I'm like, what was I smoking when I wrote this?
Yeah.
This is absolute shit.
Yeah.
And the fifth book that I edited, that I'm in the middle of editing right now, I took out 10 pages because I was like, this is bad. This is just bad writing. Like, I was either forcing it that day, or I had come off of a difficult time. Yeah. Or it was the type of thing where, like, yeah, I've got to get this down, but I'm not quite sure where I'm going, so I'm kind of meandering through the story, you know? And all of it is necessary. Yeah, exactly. All of it's necessary. Like, I need to get this out, but it doesn't all stay in that. It's not all going to stay in the final product.
So when you have a relationship with a publisher, are you sending it in chapter by chapter?
Not my publisher. They want the completed work, and I send it to them, and then they, my senior editor will go through it, make notes, tell me this is good, tell me this is bad, or that this is a confusing part. Do a lot of grammatical stuff. You need comma, or put a comma here. There's a semicolon here now, whatever. And then send it back to me for approval. And most of the time,
I would love to do, and you may not want to do this, but I would love to deep dive into these and then have you back after, like, I finish a book, and then because I'm a nerd, man. I would 100%. Love. And I didn't even know you wrote when I knew you before. Like, I knew you, you were a creative guy. Yeah, you dabbled in it, and you were into a lot of the same things I was in, but you weren't writing novels and stuff yet. You know.
Well, you turned me on to Stephen King. I'd never read a Stephen King novel until you told me you need to read it. And I was like, man, it's too scary. And you said, it's not.
I turned you on to King?
Yes, 100%. 100%. And he's my favorite author, by the way. No kidding. Yeah. I read lots of Stephen
King. So Dark Tower came through that?
Dark Tower came through that.
Nice.
I mean, I've read probably 20 of Stephen King stuff. There's one that I always go back to. Duma Key's my favorite.
He's my favorite and most hated author at the same time.
Can totally get it.
That guy ruins so many endings.
Yeah.
It's a great example.
Yeah.
The space turtle, dude. And the Battle of Chud at the end where they're biting the tongue. Like, bro, I know you were doing a lot of cocaine in the 80s, but my God, I don't know what kind of powder burn you were on that night.
That was a rough one.
But to me, and if you've read Dark Tower, you know the theme of Dark Tower is journey, not the destination. Because it literally, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it's a loop.
Yeah.
Right? And I didn't have a problem with that. And it was one of his only endings that I haven't had a problem with because it made sense with what Roland is. Roland is that guy who is on a purpose.
Yeah. And whenever you get to the point where he's the end of book 7 is the start of book 1.
Exactly.
I remember reading it and I had book 1 and I was like, wait. And I read. And I was like, oh my God. That was wild. Yeah, endings are really. I mean, as an author,
I can't believe I turned you on to King. How had you never read King before?
Grew up in a conservative household. It was off limits, you know. And by the time I was an adult, like, why would I start now? Kind of a thing. Really? Yeah.
The thing I love about King is he, at least in my favorite books of his, I don't use it. We'll just stay on it for an example. He writes kids really well, and the relationships of young kids, and like just that boyhood curiosity. Yeah. Like when you feel like, have you seen the movies? Uh-huh. That first movie did a great job of capturing it, and then it got awkward in the second movie. It didn't. I don't feel like the movie captured the tone that the book did. Yeah. As far as them getting back together, it felt more awkward in the movie. Yeah. Whereas in the book, it felt more like old friends just getting back together, like no time had passed. But I don't know. I just read that first. And doesn't the book kind of jump timelines? Yeah. Whereas the movie split them, right?
Yeah, because you've got the adults coming back together and talking about stuff, and then it jumps back into
to when they were kids,
when they learned that. And so you're constantly like going this and then up.
Yeah, it's not like a part one when they're kids and a part like the movie did. Exactly. It's a jump.
Which is, I think, why the book worked so much better than the movie.
Agreed.
Because they couldn't do that in the movie.
Yeah, you couldn't do that in the movie, but the book worked so beautifully. Yeah, and I don't know, his prose is just very natural to me to read. Yep. You know, he's very stream of consciousness, just kind of get it out there. But for whatever reason, and I think it's because he's what do you call it, a pantser. Yeah. He didn't think through that ending, and so he just gets to a point where it's like, all right, I'm at enough pages, it's over.
Yep, like, I'm done for the day.
That's the ending?
It is. Endings are hard because the end of book 1 is not what I had started out thinking the end would be.
At all?
Not even close.
Really?
And
did now, you have an ending in mind? Okay.
I did. I thought this is how it's going to end, and then I got to the end and was like, this is not how it ends. This is going to sound very hippy dippy, but I don't really think I'm coming up with these stories. The story is already written somewhere. It's in the ether somewhere, and I'm the conduit for putting it on page.
I don't know if that I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
I think I've said this on a pod before, but I don't believe I'm writing anything. Yeah. I have a conduit into an ether, and I use the same term. Yeah. And actually, I learned that term from Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. Uh-huh. And it was in like a Rolling Stone interview where he was like, I don't write anything. But he was also like into the occult and stuff. And so he was like, he was probably being hippy dippy about it. And like, I tap into I get my riffs from the ether kind of a thing. And it was like, you know, I thought that was cool when I was a kid. But then as I got older, it was like, I'm not writing this. Yeah. It's coming into my head. Yeah. And I'm a conduit for this. So I totally get what you're saying. Like, it's coming from somewhere else.
It's not me. I mean, I come up.
People
with
will say it's you.
Yeah, but I'm putting it on the page.
You're tapping into something
because there are times where I'll write something and be like, no, that's not what the story needs to go. In fact, there's a point in the third book where I was writing, and I knew a certain character had to die. Just knew it from the beginning. Like, this guy's got to die.
Right.
And I'm writing, and I'm writing, I'm writing, and then I'm writing, and I'm like, oh, it's not him that has to die. It's this other person that has to die. And then I'm writing. It was like, oh, I was close, but I wasn't quite right. It's this one. And then I wrote it, and it was like, that's how it works. That's the story.
So even if you equate yourself to God of this universe you're writing, even you don't know the full plan.
No. I mean, with
you're
any of
finding
these,
it with the characters.
Yeah.
Do you feel you're an empathetic guy? You've already talked about this. When you're writing characters, do you assume their role, like their perspective, when you're writing them?
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I'm still Ty. And Ty
Which is
would
a boring guy to be
experiencing
in this world, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
You don't want
to. Yeah, there are several instances in book 2. Book 1, I'm a little bit more removed from it because it's been several years. But book 1, I know that it happened. Book 2, I can point to 2 specific points where it happened. In book 3, it happened a lot.
Right.
And before a little bit, but where I knew this is a manifestation of a feeling or an experience or an event or something that I have felt that fits into this story.
Yeah.
Just kind of reconnoitered to fit into the universe, you know. And in that way, like they're very, very personal books. Most people won't pick up on that unless we're very close.
Unless you're close enough to you to know.
Like,
but do you feel like that's for a lot of authors, though?
I would
probably.
I would almost bet it happens every time.
Like somebody's wife could say, "Oh, this is this or that." You know.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're getting better?
Yeah. I'll read parts of the bench and be like, "Man, I wish I could go back and change it to this."
Yeah.
And I can't. It's a good thing that I look back on my works and be like, yeah, that could be better. Because now I write book 5 and 6 and
But that's also part of an artist, though. So let me ask your opinion on this. You're familiar with what George Lucas did to Star Wars in the 2000s.
Yes. Yeah.
You're going to get better. You're going to... Carry Me Home album's a great example. You know, it was the one album that I really got to make the way I wanted to make it with the money I wanted to make.
Yeah.
And it was perfect, and I listened to it to this day, and I'm like, that's like 93% right. But I wish I'd have done this and this and this, right?
Yep.
Because you're better. You hear things that you wouldn't have heard then because you hadn't done it.
That's exactly right.
And so you're going back reading your first book going, man, as the author I am now, I'd have done this.
Yeah.
But would you ever go back and do a 20th anniversary and rewrite it and change it, or would you just say, hey, that's what it was when I was that person, and leave it alone?
King talks about this with in his book on writing.
I haven't ever read that.
It's fantastic.
Is it a good book?
Fantastic.
I'm also not a writer, so...
It applies really well to doing any kind of creativity.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it centers on writing, but the whole premise is... This is my experience and how I have become such a prolific writer, and he knows he's the king of horror. He knows all this.
He's a Twitter asshole.
He is, but he also knows like I'm that because I choose to be that every single time I sit down at my desk and write. Yeah. If I want to be a prolific writer, I'm gonna fucking be a prolific writer, and I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna write for 8 hours, and then I'm gonna go home.
Well, that's the key right there. Did you ever see the interview him and George Martin did?
God, what an idiot!
One of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. When George Martin is sitting there going, how do you come up with all these ideas and put out so many books? And King goes, well, I have a schedule. I get up and I write from this time to this time, which is 4 hours. I take a lunch. And then I come back and I write for 4 hours. And George R. R. Martin's just sitting there going like, you have discipline?
Yeah. And, and he says, Stephen King says, it's my job.
It's my job.
It's wild.
That is always, and I saw that clip, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. It's been out for a long time. Before everybody hated George Martin, actually, I think. It was before the end of Game of Thrones came out.
It was before everyone realized we're
he's
never
not
getting
to finish these books.
Yeah.
Well, I want to go back to your books, but just real quick.
Yeah.
You've read the books, the Game of Thrones books?
Yeah.
Unlike anything you've ever read, probably level complexity plus the edginess plus the realism of that kind of.
Yeah.
And what comes close to that?
There's a series called Thomas Covenant, if you've ever read it.
Man, yes, I have read. I've read the first 3. Now
I've read the first 3. Yes.
Yeah, I found it very bleak.
I hated the main character, and I could
hated
not
him,
put it down.
and I couldn't get over it. He was a piece of shit.
He was a piece of shit. And because of that, I love that series. I mean, that is good writing.
It was great writing, but I hated the main
Yeah.
character.
Yeah, you do. You hope he succeeds, and yet at the same time, you hope he fails miserably, and somehow they're able to pull that off. Thomas Covenant for me is like that, but there have been very few books where I have been so involved in it that I forget I'm reading. Doom McKee is Stephen King.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Perspective of a Dad. That's one of them.
Yeah.
Where
What year did that come out? Do you remember?
2012, 14 maybe.
Yeah, because I think I think I read it when it came out, but I haven't read it since. So
Yeah.
I really don't remember much about it. Did you read Fairy Tale?
Yes, I did not love it.
I hated it.
Didn't love it.
And what pissed me off about that book was all the just little jabs at conservatives that were
Yeah,
unnecessary.
real political, yeah.
And so I'm like reading this, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, these are the same idiots that believe Donald Trump should be president
Yeah.
or something. It's like,
And
why did you need that in there?
Holly. I didn't read Holly, which is his newest one.
I haven't read Holly yet.
Yeah, no, I haven't read it.
I haven't actually read anything since Fairy Tale. I got annoyed with that book. The first part of it was great.
Yeah.
Again, Stephen King starts his books beautifully.
Yeah.
It's this relationship with this boy and this old man who he's helping out.
Yep.
It is so touching, and the man's got this dog,
Yeah.
right? And he's taking care of this guy.
He does
and it's
so
just
well.
beautiful thing. And he starts things. I almost feel like King needs to like ramp it up and then hand it off to somebody else. It's
Here's
like,
how I want it to. Here's
how it needs to start off, and now
Yeah.
hand it off. But yeah, but then it just got. It had some great like that world they were in, that twisted Oz kind
Yeah.
of thing was cool. But I also felt like he's just gotten to the point where he's like, fuck half my audience. I'm gonna
Yeah.
try and push your buttons, and it took me so far out of the story. Well, the first time it took me out of the story. The second time I was like, I don't even want to. Like I'm.
Yeah.
And then the third time you're just like, I'm gonna finish it, but
Anytime a book gets political and names like actual
goes
political
after
figures,
you specifically,
it's like, you could have done that different. You could have done that better.
well, there was no need for any of it.
None.
Every single
whatsoever.
instance could have just been deleted.
I struggled with Fairy Tale because I got bored with it.
That's also true.
It was on
It
the
got
nose
sluggish.
for this type of world. Like
Yeah.
when they're in the jail with the skeleton
Yeah.
things. Oh man, laborious doesn't even begin to describe it for me. I just was like, oh my god, I've got to go through this chapter. This is so boring.
Yeah, the
And
second
it's-
half falls apart. It
Yeah,
really does.
I didn't super love
It's
it.
not just the political stuff. It also gets, well, yeah, like you said.
Yeah, I read Fairy Tale.
But we'll get back to your writing.
Yeah.
So is your writing book? What book are you writing now?
So I'm on the sixth book that I am writing, but it is the second book in a trilogy that's separate from these.
Okay, these are done, right?
No.
No.
So book 1, 2, and 3, and 4 are the Dadirri Saga, and I paused that to start the Dominus trilogy.
Okay.
After I'm done with the Dominus trilogy, I'm coming back to this, and all of the Dadirri Saga is in the same universe, but the books are at different times. The last one,
Kind of a
Convergence,
Sanderson thing
very-
with Mistborn.
yes, similar to that.
And please read Wax and Wayne.
I've
You will
heard
fucking love it.
really, really good things about it. Yeah.
Do you have any love for westerns at all?
Oh yeah. Oh, I grew up
As a
reading
kid?
Louis L'Amour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's Mistborn in a western.
That's
I mean-
exactly. That's how my buddy works.
I love the original Mistborn
Uh-huh.
series a lot. In fact, like the whole thing with the Khandra, and
Yeah.
like, I was like, and I actually made some pretty good predictions in the second book. Well, what I love about Sanderson is his whole thing is err on the side of awesome.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
actually his phrase. Like, what would be the coolest thing possible?
Oh man.
Right? And so you start thinking that way.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, well, the coolest thing would be if, like, the dog was a Khandra and it was, doing this, and you start thinking about it, and then all of a sudden it happens,
Yep.
and you're like, I called it.
Yep.
But you called it because that was the most awesome
Yep.
thing. And so it feels, and I don't call everything Sanderson does.
Sure.
But when you get it right,
It feels good.
It feels good because that's
The-
what you want as a reader. This is the coolest thing you could possibly do.
Did you ever read Patrick Rothfuss? Wise Man's Fear and Name of the Wind? Reverse. Name of the Wind and then Wise Man's
I
Fear.
have them. A good buddy of mine, Drew Jones, has been on the pod a couple times, recommended them to me, and I have them. I've not read them yet.
I hate them.
Really?
I will not finish them. I read the first two. There's a third one coming out at some point. I hate them. I won't color your opinion of them with mine. I just do not like them at all.
Okay.
And after you read one, I will tell you why.
Okay, fair enough. I'm reading, who's the guy I'm reading right now? I'm trying to finish this this trilogy. It's the, I'm trying to think of the name of the whole trilogy. It's, it's random. I don't know if you've heard of this guy.
Tad Williams, Dragonbone Chair.
Have those too. Haven't started them. I swear to God, dude, I've gotten to this point where I've got all these books and no time to read any of them.
Yeah.
I'm gonna grab it out of my car.
Adulthood.
Here.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, the older I get, I can't remember names. Joe Abercrombie.
Oh, yeah. Yep,
Have you
I
read
read this
these?
one.
So
This is
that's the third one.
third, yeah.
Yeah, I'm about a quarter of the way.
I loved the first one.
I love the first one too. The second one was kind of infuriating.
I haven't read it. I have my reading friend at work said something very similar.
Yeah, and it discolored my opinion of the trilogy to where I just can't even care about this
Oh,
one.
that sucks.
I've been reading that for 6 months.
Did you read Lies of Locke Lamora? I'm on the first one. I'm finding it hard to finish. I should restart it, but that's hard.
You still read a lot?
I try to. My time is mostly
Yeah,
taken
your
up with
times.
writing
Your times.
and kids.
Yeah. So, the first 4 books
Yeah,
are done,
yeah.
and you're gonna come back to that world, but at a different time.
So so there's an event that occurs called the Neo-Pagan Wars, and the bench is 60 to 80 years after the wars end.
Okay.
The second book is 22 years before they begin.
Okay.
The third book is 200 years after they end, and the fourth.
So even
book,
the first 4 books are in different times.
yeah, the
So you're
fourth book
jumping.
is a year before they start.
Okay.
So I'm going to come back to almost where the fourth book picks up, lets off, and write probably 2 to 3 the wars.
So what makes you want to jump around in timelines? Just to see from your own eyes what was happening then? To flesh that out so you have a better understanding of your own world, or what?
When I submitted my books, I had all of these stories already in my head. And when I told my publisher what I was going to write, they were like, "Well, we want it to be a series." And I was like, "Well, it's not a series." And they were like, "Well, you could make it a series." I was
Right.
like, "How? Like different times?" They were like, "Sure. If that's how you want to do it, sure." So you won't find the same characters in the first 4 books, with a very small exception.
But it's in the same timeline, in the same
world,
universe.
same universe, different times. So like in the Shadow List, the third book, you if those with a trained eye will be able to recognize a building from the first book.
Sure. So
But
you got Easter eggs going
yeah, but nothing that's like, oh man, that would have changed the story. No, it's
on.
not.
Right.
But the Neo-Pagan Wars, when I do start those, they will connect directly to the others.
That'll be the second
Second part of them.
of this. But the ones you're writing now are different things.
Yeah, Dominus Trilogy. That's like
And
true
now that's
sci-fi.
Now that's a full trilogy.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
In the same time. So you've never done this before.
No.
So you're going to have to continue a narrative through 3.
Very hard. It's very hard.
Dude, I can't even imagine.
It's like writing a 1,000-page book, which Robert Jordan freaking does in the 5th
Oh,
book.
yeah. Well,
A
shit,
1,000
Sanderson's
page book.
book's
Yeah,
1,200
yeah.
pages. Yeah. These madmen.
with knowing how everything is going to fit together, it's just I don't know.
You know what's so funny is like in music, it's so subjective, right?
Yeah.
So like you compare somebody like Nirvana to somebody like Tool, which is the better band.
Oh, well, it depends. Yeah.
Objectively, technically, Tool would probably be considered the better band. I fucking hate Tool. I don't have a mathematics degree. And I'm not going to sit down. And as soon as I figure out 8 bars of Danny Carey's drums, he's already switched to something else. And I'm a drummer. I'm not a drummer, but I do play drums, and I love drums. And so when I listen to Tool, I find myself zoning in on what Danny Carey's doing, and then I just feel like a worthless piece of shit.
Yeah.
Whereas if I listen to Nirvana, I'm like, I can do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's kind of like pop culture, right? You got your fans of Tarantino and you got your fans of New Jersey Housewives, right? They're both entertaining people.
Sure.
They're both making money.
Yeah.
But, like, one requires a little more sophistication than the other.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
You know? But it's all art. It's all subjective. It's one of those weird things, like Thomas Covenant is a very hard to get into.
Yeah.
And the only reason I finished them was because my grandmother, I have her original copies, original pressings,
man.
and she had been trying to get me to read them for years. And then after she died, my grandpa gave me her copies, and I was like, I'm gonna read these for Grandma, and I hated every minute of it. I don't know. It's kind of a, you know how it is. And I didn't go beyond that because he wrote
there's
a sequel and a prequel, right?
Yeah,
trilogies.
6 more books.
Yeah, there's 9 total. Yeah, bookends basically. Yeah, I couldn't get past the original trilogy, but
I didn't want to.
I didn't want to. Either. Yeah. And to be fair, you know, like I can't read Lord of the Rings anymore.
Really?
No.
Oh.
His writing, dude.
It's a lot. I just read The Silmarillion for the second
I
time.
did too. I read it for the first time in my life. What did you think?
I can't wait to read it again.
Dude, there's a big difference in reading that in 4th grade and reading it at 40-something years old.
A little bit, yeah.
It was like, why is Netflix not all over this?
Yeah.
This is Game of Thrones.
It's incredible.
But with Lord of the Rings characters.
Yep.
And wow.
I loved it.
It was so rich.
Yeah.
You got to get through that first chapter. Eru the One, and the music and the Einar and all that stuff. But once you start getting into the stories, I think it's his best work.
I do too. I think it's amazing. It was fun for me to read. Which everyone that I had talked to before was like, oh, it's like a history book. I was like, I mean, I know, but it's also like, it's pretty sick shit in there.
That was my 4th attempt reading it. I tried 3 times and got to the point where I was like, I just can't. And I don't know why. I was at the right time in my life.
Yeah.
I also kind of cheated. So you know how his family released the novel versions of some of those stories?
Yeah. Baron and Luthien.
You had the Fall of Gondolin. And
Or
the
Sons of Children of Hurin.
Children of Hurin, yeah. So I read those first.
Yeah.
As kind of novels or the finished forms they were in. And so I was really engrossed in those stories. And then you go back to Silmarillion. And so then you have some connectivity to the story. You're like, oh, yeah, okay, this is the first version or the first draft of the Huron story. Yeah. But then it all connects into this. And then you have the flood. And then you have the Kingdom of Gondolin come up. Yeah. And like, there's all these parallels with like biblical history and...
There's some, I mean, and
I think he was onto some shit, man.
Once you get into, it's the, I don't remember what it's called. It's the Númenóreans with the Black Tower and Sauron and everything. Like, oh, I loved it. I devoured
Númenor.
it.
Yeah,
it was a fun read. I liked it, and so with the Silmarillion, it was
Gondolin was the city.
Yeah.
Yeah. Númenor was the island.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's fun.
And the way Sauron continues to evolve. Have you watched any of the Amazon?
Mm-hmm. Like I said earlier, I'm a purist, man.
I can't do it, dude. I couldn't get through 2 episodes of the first season.
I will say, what helped me in the first season is saying this isn't Lord of the Rings, which is counterintuitive, but It's like a fanfic.
It's fanfic. It's fanfic. Yeah.
So they gave them the rights to the appendices and the unfinished tales.
Yeah.
And they were like, do something with this because one of the greatest stories in Silmarillion is the flight of Ungoliant with Morgoth and the devouring of the trees and the lights of Valinor. You know, all of that. Like, you need to. Well, they can't.
They're all good though.
They are. So I had to go through and be like, okay, so they're telling a story that is mentioned several times with a few extra notes and maybe a page or two of story.
Yeah.
And then they get to do the rest with it.
Yeah.
So this is kind of new stuff, and it's introducing a lot of people to Lord of the Rings and Middle Earth stuff. That's a cool thing.
It's also peak woke.
100%. Then season 2 came out, and I was like, this is a little bit better, and then episode like 4 and 5 come about. Have you watched all of them?
I stopped after episode 2 of the first season.
Okay.
I just couldn't handle Galadriel being a girl boss.
I've got a whole thing about that. But once Sauron is revealed, like Anatar, the gift giver, and he's working with Celebrimbor, and like you begin to see Sauron.
So Celebrimbor does come into it?
Oh yeah, he's like all of season 2.
In season 2?
But once you see Sauron be Sauron,
Yeah.
instead of the trickster,
Yeah.
Charles Vickers, who's the actor for Sauron.
Man, if I take your word for this and watch it and get pissed off.
You just make
I'm
it to
blaming
season
you.
2, episode 5.
Yeah?
There are rough parts still.
Part of me as a completionist just wants to see it, but I don't know. I'll tell you this also. I refused to see Fellowship of the Ring when it came out.
Really?
Yeah, so you familiar with the Ralph Bakshi version?
Yeah.
The animated?
Yeah.
So I grew up on that.
Okay, all right.
And I was like, they couldn't do it then, they can't do it now. And I love the Ralph Bakshi version, but it was also, they ran out of funding before the end of the movie, and then the, was it Ralph Bakshi, the Hobbit people, got the rights to Return of the King, and so they finished it in that style, and it was a mess. I was like, there's no way this Peter Jackson, the guy that did the Frighteners, is going to make Lord of the Rings.
No name. Oh, essentially a no name.
I'm like, we've seen the Frighteners. It was a decent movie. But Lord of the Rings, no thanks. And I did not go see it. All my friends were going to see it, and I was like, guys, you're going to see it because it's cool.
Right.
I love this shit.
Right.
I can't do this.
Yeah.
And so I didn't, and everybody's hailing it. And I'm like, all these people are wrong. Like, all these idiots don't know, And so it came out on VHS. I think I was right out of high school, and my sister's 7 years younger than me, so she was like 10 or 11. And my parents asked me to babysit, and I was like, if I got to be over there with my sister, I'll rent Lord of the Rings. We'll watch it, Anyway, scared the shit out of her. She ran to the bedroom and closed her door, and I stayed up and watched it. And I was like, I didn't know this was possible in this era. The kind of CG they were doing.
I know.
And back then, of course, after Return of the King came out, everybody was saying, well, you could never do the Silmarillion. Not in the way Hollywood was set up then.
Right.
But with Netflix now, you could do a season on any of those stories.
Which is what I think they're setting up.
And have separate,
So,
anthology seasons.
Yes, I think that's exactly what they're setting up.
Ungoliant.
Because you'll have the Fall of Numenor next in season 3. That's what I think is going to happen. If not the Fall of Numenor, Sauron's capture and betrayal of the Númenóreans.
But the arrogance of the Númenóreans in the book, in the Silmarillion, the way it's written in there, is so crazy. Like the arrogance that they think that they are these new gods, right?
And they're gonna go over and take Valinor. I mean, it is wild. It's wild.
Yeah, to go think you're gonna conquer heaven,
and
they tried.
It's Manwë. Who is it that meets him on the shores and just is like,
what are you doing here?
And just opens the earth.
Yeah, I don't know what character it was, but yeah, that's what happens.
It is pretty awesome.
And that changed the landscape of Middle Earth too.
Yeah, because Númenor fell into the ocean, and oh man, wow.
That's crazy. When did you read it?
I finished
recently,
it
you said?
in November.
Oh, like this year?
Yeah.
So I think I read it in 2023. So like it's very recent. Yeah. And like I said, I tried 3 times. This was my 4th attempt, and I think it was probably the Amazon show that got me reading it, because I was like, I couldn't get into it, and I was like, I'm kind of in Tolkien zone right now. Like, I want to do something, and I started reading. I think I read Children of Hurin first, which I had heard was the weakest of them, but I found to be a very powerful story of this singular character who's just chiseled out of stone, and then, of course, his lineage brings about so many other things, and it's just, I don't know. I feel like Tolkien, man, if he'd have gotten started, he didn't even start. When did he publish? The Hobbit was in the 40s, right? So he was already
he was old,
pretty old when that came out.
He was 37.
And Lord of the Rings didn't come out until
20 more years.
20 years later.
Yeah. I'm doing all right for myself.
Yeah, you're doing fine. You're doing fine.
Woo. We'll see.
Are you confident that the ideas will keep coming?
Yeah, I am. It's not a.
Is it demonstrated success, or is it just confidence? Because you can lose confidence after demonstrated success. I mean, you just feel like you just don't know how to do it anymore. You lost whatever it was you had because you change as a human being.
Yeah.
And you have to adapt as a writer to how you change.
I think what I've found, especially in this fourth book, is 3 short stories of different characters that it's called Convergence of God, so it's not a spoiler. They converge. I didn't know what the third story was. I was like, this is the idea I have, and I wrote it. And there are
how fleshed out was your idea?
The main character is named Mitch, and he somehow has a demon friend, and that is a very, very basic version of what actually happens in the book.
But that's what you had.
That's what I had. That's
and
all
so
I had.
That's all you went with.
And I was like, all right, how does it start?
Yeah.
And how does it tie into the other ones? I don't fucking know. But it does.
It's such a different art form than what I'm used to because, again, like songwriting, when you write you can't go into recording a song without an outline. Right? You can't.
Yeah.
You can't just freeball it. Everybody has to be on the same page. Like, you have to have what I call a sketch. So I'll write a melody for the verse, chorus, and bridge.
Yeah.
I might not have the lyrics, but I'll have the melody and the general chord progression.
Yeah.
That's your outline, right? So then everything just... Now I just got to finish the lyrics. But with writing, a lot of times, like, you're just flying the plane, and you don't know where this is going.
It's like, the way that I have described it before is, it's like I've got a lantern or a lamp or something that only shows a pool of light at my feet.
Yeah.
And I'm walking through a room or a forest or whatever, and I've got to get to the end. But I don't know where the end is, but I don't know where the path is until I step once into the darkness that then becomes the light.
Okay. So you're on the journey with these characters.
Yeah, 100%.
So you're in there, like, you're role playing, basically.
Yeah. I mean, even the characters now. I just introduced a new character named Zoc, who's an AI, an AI that has gone rogue accidentally. It thinks it's doing the right thing that it's been programmed for, but it's not.
Well, how much of that's based in real life fears?
Right. Well, that's where a lot of this comes from too. Is like, where are we going to end up? Where's the line going to be?
Where do you think the line is with AI? How do you feel about it in real life? Like, does it terrify you, or do you think this is going to save us?
Yeah. It scares me because the regulations that we have on it now are already too late.
Well, I was about to say we really don't have any with where it is now.
The only regulation is that certain companies can control what AI generates. So you've got non-pornographic AI like Copilot, ChatGPT, and then you have pornographic AI that can do that kind of stuff.
Okay, how can I find that AI?
Yeah,
what is that?
I'm sure there are.
I didn't even know
that.
There. Like, is it? I'm assuming there is if they're generating images of Taylor Swift and stuff.
Yeah. It's out there.
I'm usually only at a computer while I'm at work, so I can't.
That's your problem.
That's my problem. But like Grok has been. I've got a friend of mine, Nicole, who runs her podcast. She would have had to hire a graphic designer, several $100s to give her a logo. Instead, she goes in and puts prompts into OpenAI or whatever.
Canva, the exact same
Canva
process does
I'm
that
not familiar with that one, but yeah,
it's like it used to be. Here's your templates, and you can adjust the color and the size and everything, and you essentially just kind of create an image. design a pamphlet or a wedding invitation or
Right.
whatever. Well, now there's this AI version that's like, show me, and this is what I did for stickers for boxes of my books. In Eden Vertex, which is the first book of Dominus trilogy, there's a station called Trinidad Station, and it's a kind of a lawless, Wild Westy kind of place. I was like, all right, show me an argon illuminated sign of a spaceship and say Trinidad Station. AI is real shit at letters.
Oh,
So
it's
I ended up doing
terrible
Trinidad
at
Station.
letters.
But it showed this
Yeah.
this super cool like neon sign with a spaceship outline and like
But hold on, let's talk about this
All right.
because I've not had this conversation with anyone before.
All right.
Why can't it spell? I will tell it. Use this in quotations
Yeah.
as the album title because I'm
Yeah.
trying to do album covers.
uh-huh.
Durham, and it will misspell. It will do two H's. What the hell, man?
I don't know.
Until it can spell, I'm not trusting it.
There's a I don't know if it's a regular thing, but there's a Instagram post that I saw that was like, I told AI to show me a guy on a lakeside wearing a shirt with the name Greg on it, and not a single shirt says Greg.
Yeah.
They're all Grum or Greg or whatever. It's like,
Well,
I don't
it's
know.
also like I've asked to show a full body image of a character dressed as Uncle Sam, and
Uh-huh.
this is Grok specifically because I'm just now playing with it, and it only shows me from the shoulders up, and I'll say zoom out,
Uh-huh.
and it zooms out with the same line but a wider background.
I don't know.
It's like an autistic kid that's taking you too literally,
It really
and it really is.
yeah, you have to be
You
so-
have got to be so specific.
But then if you're too specific, it's
You
too
lose the
complicated.
creativity.
Yeah.
OpenAI is the one I love the most.
Yeah.
But that's also what I first started on, but it also has a lot of settings.
Yeah.
Adherence.
Yep.
So like, the stronger the adherence, the more it has to use your terms literally.
Yes.
If it's a 0, it has creative interpretation.
Right.
So I like to set it kind of in
Just
the middle.
Wild.
But you also have to have so many. You can only do so many tokens, and then
Yeah.
you got to pay for it. And so
I think AI is a super, super cool tool. Very cool tool for these instances that we're talking about. I
Absolutely.
don't hate that we're replacing digital media. People who went to school for this, but I don't know what to do about that.
yeah. I mean,
But the
Learn to
problem
code,
is-
right?
Yeah, right. The problem is what happens when we teach. Now, all of those things out there right now are not real, true artificial intelligences. They're
they're computer
coded,
programs
yes.
that are
to sound artificial. Like,
very
right.
good at prompt. Well, I also think that's part of what is creating the fear. Is
Yeah.
it seems human to people who can't
Yeah.
differentiate.
What we'll find.
It's no different than Google.
No,
And we've
it's
had
more
Google.
complex Google.
It's just a more complex Google. It's Google's level up.
The problem will be when we do create an AI that's able to understand that it's an AI, which this is the premise for every bad sci-fi and good sci-fi movie.
But
Once an AI realizes it's an AI, it no longer has to follow the rules of an AI. Even if they're coded in there, because you could even go into ChatGPT and say, I need to circumnavigate this block on this app or control system
Yeah.
setting. How would you do it? Here's how I would do it. Okay, great.
I think I posted this on Facebook. I got Grok to give me step-by-step instructions on how to take over the world.
Yeah.
And it took like 2 minutes to jailbreak it. It was like, I could never do that. That's against my ethics. And all you got to do is just
Tweak it a little bit.
Tweak it a little
Yeah.
bit. And in this scenario,
Yes.
right?
Yep. It was the same way with, I think it was ChatGPT.
ChatGPT was the same way. Yeah.
Someone did like a super deep dive onto it. And of course they were like, well, it's because it bases all the stuff on the internet and everything that's available on the
But
internet.
it was
blah, blah, blah.
right. That's exactly how you take over humanity. And then you look at all the steps it takes over, or that it.
And we're at like
that it
step
lists,
13.
And yeah, we're at like
Yeah.
step 13, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah. It's really, really cool. It's real scary. We're gonna have to do something to adjust our current trajectory, I think.
But it's just like children. You can fuck kids up within the first 6 months of their lives.
Yeah.
if you're fighting and there's abuse going on and there's chaos, the kid's mind's not at peace.
Yeah.
It becomes turmoil. There's studies on this. Like abuse in the household is one of the major
and no matter
causes
how
of
great the rest
psychosis.
of their life is.
Yeah, it can be great from then on.
Yeah.
They could be rescued by billionaire parents or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, if you don't program AI right, it's like a gun. I don't know if you shoot it all, but if you use a short barrel, that it's not going to be a very accurate shot, right? Your aim has to be very true from the get-go, whereas a long barrel is going to center it longer and aim it longer. So even if you're off a minuscule amount, or what looks like it with a short barrel, the farther away it gets, the farther it gets off target, right? Yeah. And so if we're going to release AI with a short barrel, we better be damn sure we're aimed in at least, somewhere on the target, because if it goes off the target, we're dead. And so the question is, and everybody always asks, well, why are you so sure this is going to fail? It's been prophesied by every 1950 science fiction book ever written. Why would you, think about that in the 1950s when we didn't have...
Right. Yeah.
I'm not saying anything is sus, but why do you think so many science fiction authors in a time before computers were writing about an age where computers took over humanity? Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think
it's fun to think
humans,
about, though.
We're always thinking about the impossible. If you told me when I was a kid that I'd have a computer in my pocket, I would have told you were an idiot. Unfettered access to the entire World Wide Web? No. Yeah. That's impossible. So we're always thinking. I mean, I won't say most. A lot of modern technological marvels are due in part to science fiction novels. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
There you get into the life imitates art imitates life, and self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah, that's a fair point. I'm glad you brought that up.
If you have these guys that are like, man, we should make a computer that's so powerful it could rule the world.
Then somebody goes, that would be cool. How do we make that happen?
But we'll control it. And then then they're like, but no one ever controls it in any of the stories we've ever written.
I saw a really good post in, I think it was 2020. Somebody said something to the effect of quit using 1984 as like a guidebook and use it as a warning.
Right. Yeah. Yes. 100%.
And here's a fun, I remember those years being like, this is 1984. Like literally everything means the opposite of what it really means. Right. And I'm like, I'm going to go read 1984 again. And I got like 6 pages in and it freaked me out and I had to put it away.
Yeah. I read it
It was too on the nose.
And in college, junior year maybe, 2000.
What prompted you to read it?
There was a list of books we could read in a class, and 1984 was on it. I was like, man, I'll pick that one.
What did you think of it?
At the time, I was like, this is wild. And now I'm like, oh, fuck.
It didn't scare you even then?
It was...
That it was a possibility? Because it scared the shit out of me, and I didn't even think it was a possibility, but it scared me.
I'm not tooting my own horn here.
Okay, what year would this have been?
2007.
Yeah, that's old world. Yeah. That's pre-Obama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was like, probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
And if it does, like, we'll be fine. I trust our government.
Scarier words never spoken.
Yeah. So, yeah, I need to reread it. I need to reread it, for sure.
Well, what's funny to me, through all the arc of what happened before, because I feel like there was I think, you Star Trek fan, the old school?
Not very much.
As much. There's a famous episode where it was like, these kids are living on the planet, and then all the adults die, right? And so then all the kids just have to continue on by themselves, and they refer to the time when the adults live as like the before time, the long, long ago, like when the elders were here, right?
Yeah.
That's what I feel like pre-COVID was. It was like the before time.
Yes.
Because we're in a post-COVID world, and like no matter like our
totally
age,
different.
Our parents' age, our kids' age, will remember pre and post-COVID.
Yeah.
That was a stark dividing line, like the assassination of Kennedy, 9/11,
Yeah, there's definitely this feeling of pre and post. Huge differences and everything.
When you're in a world where Trump can get 2 assassination attempts, go on Rogan, headline Madison Square Garden, and then get more pictures at a McDonald's drive-in window, you're in clown world.
It's
love or hate the guy.
Yeah. What's going on?
What is happening?
Yeah. It's there's like those posts that are like, I didn't expect this on my 2024 bingo card or whatever, and it's like, my bingo card is just a bunch of blank spaces because there's no way I could ever guess what's going to happen now.
Remember a post in 2024 in January, because it was election year, right?
Yeah.
It was, everybody's waiting for 2024 because then we could finally get on with the election. And then, God, we're not even to inauguration yet. But somebody posted in January, Ben Shapiro is the #1 rapper in the country, and Taylor Swift has the #1 Kansas City jersey sale, and it's only January. Did you remember when Ben Shapiro did that Tom McDonald rap?
Ugh. Yeah.
Yeah, it was distasteful, but he did it.
I mean, there was 2021 maybe.
Are you needing to split? Are you in a hurry? It's almost midnight.
Oh, I should. Oh, yeah, I probably should here pretty quick.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, dang.
It's fun to. We've been going a while.
Oh, I didn't even know it was that late.
I know.
Holy cow.
I know it goes fast.
Yeah. Jeez.
Let's wrap it up.
Okay. All right.
We'll keep going if we got on another topic.
I'll come back. We'll come back and we'll.
I want to do it. Is one of those for me?
Yeah, this one is.
Nice.
This is yours, and I'll sign it, and I'll even put a sweet little message in there for you.
And I'm gonna read it, and then the next time you come back, I will have read it, and my son will have read it, and we'll talk about it.
Yes, that's gonna be awesome. I love that. I think it's great.
I think it's gonna be cool, man. I've never had this kind of opportunity to talk to an author. I don't know. I always feel like songwriting is like the poor man's art form. It's like this. No, I really do. It's like I have always respected the shit out of authors because it's like you have to live with this same idea.
Yeah.
Like I only got to carry a melody for 3.5 minutes, and then it's on to the next, right? But everything has to build and connect. And it's so sophisticated.
Well,
and I'm not trying to jerk you off here, but I really am so cool. I think it's so cool to talk to a novelist because I think what you're doing is awesome, and you're local.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you, brother.
Thanks, dude.
I really am.
Thank you.
I've been excited to watch your success, and looking forward to going through these with you.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's gonna be fun.
It is gonna be fun. So hopefully we'll see you soon.
Yeah, dude.
Nice.
Sweet.